Recording in progress.
Hi, Alexis.
Ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. Calling to order the Borough of Sayreville Planning Board meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Beth, has this meeting been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes, Chairman, it has.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Allegra?
Here.
Mr. Blamar?
Here.
Mr. Bolton?
Here.
Mr. Buchanan?
Here.
Councilman Onoha? Councilman Onoha? Ms. Pulowski?
Here.
Mr. Spazzato?
Here.
Chairman Mueller?
Here.
Mr. Cornell?
Here.
Mr. Fowler?
Here.
Mr. Barlow?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Beth. Are there any resolutions for memorialization tonight?
Yes, this evening we have two. The first one is Colonial Gardens Buildings LLC minor subdivision, 21 John Street, Block 2, lots 54 to 59.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Motion. Second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
We have Mr. Allegra? No, this is Colonial Gardens. Mr. Blamar?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Councilman Onoha? Mr. Spazzato?
Yes.
Chairman Mueller?
Yes.
Approved. The second one is Lot 15, Journey Mill LLC, preliminary and final major site plan, 18 Journey Mill Road, Block 62, lots 15 and 16. Get a motion?
I have a motion to approve the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Blamar,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Councilman Onoha, Ms. Pulowski,
Yes.
and Chairman Mueller.
Yes.
Approved.
We have minutes for the September 2023 meeting. Does anyone have any changes, revisions, etc.? None? Okay. So, like a vote to accept the minutes. All in favor? Aye.
Opposed?
No? Okay. Anything on the communication agenda?
None this evening.
Any site plan subdivisions, hearings?
One capital review, Sayreville Board of Education, new bus transportation complex.
Okay. So I think mostly everyone's here for that, obviously. Before we start the presentation, I just want to set the stage of where we're at on this, what this board has the ability and power to do. So generally how this process is supposed to work, when the Board of Education plans to perform a capital improvement or long-range facilities project within the borough, and I'm talking generalities because, again, there's always exceptions to things. So I just want to be able to explain this to everyone so everyone has a full understanding of it. But when the Board of Ed has a capital improvement project or a long-range facilities project within the borough, normally the Board of Education would need to obtain approval from the Department of Education. Generally, the local planning board does not have any jurisdiction over the Board of Education. The Board of Education doesn't need approval from the local planning board. However, under the New Jersey statutes and the administrative code, the Board of Education is required to submit its plans for review and recommendation to the local planning board. And then the local planning board has generally 45 days to issue its findings and recommendations. And then the planning board would provide those recommendations and findings to the Department of Education. So the planning board could evaluate the project, recommend against the project, recommend conditions for the project, recommend modifications to the project, but the decision on the project rests with the Department of Education, who has the final say. Department of Education can consider our recommendations. They can modify the approval, give it a conditional approval. The Department of Education does what it feels is best. But what makes this project a little bit different is that the Board of Education wants to build its transportation complex on property that is owned by the borough in which it is leasing from the borough. So the borough, like any other landowner, could place stipulations and conditions on the lease of that property. Just like if any of you lease your house to a tenant, you could mandate that the tenant cuts the grass or pays the utilities. It's a matter of contract negotiation because it's land that the Board of Ed is going to lease from the borough. So unlike a normal situation in which the Department of Education would have complete control over the process, when the Board of Education is leasing the borough's land, the borough can exercise a certain degree of control by way of that lease. So that's generally the background regarding this application. So to address what we have now before us, the Planning Board received a copy of the Board of Education's application for the transportation complex on or about October 10th, 2023. And we were asked to schedule a formal hearing on the project. Upon our receipt of the materials, we learned that the application had in fact already been submitted to the Department of Education on May 8th, 2023. And in fact, the Department of Education had already approved the plan on May 31, 2023. So we had no opportunity to conduct a review of the plan, issue our findings, issue our recommendations, as was our right under New Jersey statute and the administrative code. We also learned that on April 26th of 2022, so last year, the borough had entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Board of Education in which it agreed to material terms for the lease of this property for the Board of Education's specific use to construct its transportation complex. The memorandum of understanding was unanimously approved at a public meeting of the Borough Council on May 9, 2022, and it was resolution number 2022-108. The material terms of that memorandum of understanding are as follows. The Board of Ed was going to lease a portion of its property to the borough for the sum of $1, and this is the property in Morgan next to the Sellover School, the ball fields, and the playground. The borough would lease a portion of its property to the Board of Education for $1, and that's the land that we're talking about now for the transportation complex. The lease was going to be 50 years with a 25-year renewal option. The borough agreed to be responsible to clear the trees and remove stumps from the borough property as may be necessary for the Board of Ed to construct the school transportation facility, not to exceed 5 acres of trees, stumps, and the borough was waiving all tree replacement requirements and/or fees, fines associated with the tree and stump removal. School transportation facility. Excuse me? Okay. Please save your comments for the mess. I understand. I'm just reading the agreement between the council and the Board of Ed. When constructing the transportation facility, the Board of Ed will construct an access road through the end of the leased portion of the borough property. The Board of Ed was responsible for bringing all utilities necessary for the transportation facility onto the borough property and to the end of the access road. The borough and the Board of Ed each agreed to cross-indemnify each other, and they each agreed to be responsible for their respective leased premises. So that was the memorandum of agreement that was approved unanimously by the mayor and council on May 9th, 2022. So to sum all of this up, this plan comes before us with the Department of Education's approval already in hand, because we were never given that opportunity to weigh in, and with the unanimous approval of the Board of Education, the council, and the mayor. So all elected officials in the borough of Sayreville have approved the location of this transportation complex. So no one should be under the impression or misimpression that this board has the power to change anything that all of the elected officials have approved. All we can do is issue our findings and recommendations, which, considering everything that's occurred already, is really after the fact. And we're here to listen to the Board of Ed's presentation, and we're here to listen to everyone's comments. And that's why we made it a point that everyone had full notice of this meeting and an opportunity to participate. So representatives of the Board of Education, you can proceed with your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, but before the presentation begins, if you don't mind.
Councilman?
Yep, just wanted to clarify. I wasn't sure if my audio was mentioned earlier for the meeting minutes for my presence hybrid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay. Want to step up, sir?
I just want to take a moment to thank you for calling this meeting so quickly to get this out in front of you. I'm Brian Eves. I'm with the Spiesel Architectural Group. I represent the Board of Education. I'm sorry. Just thanking the board for holding this meeting this quickly to let us present this to the board and the public. My name is Brian Eves. I'm a project architect with the Spiesel Architectural Group. We represent the Sayreville Board of Education. I've been with them for about 3 years, although we have worked with them for about 5 or 6 years now on many projects. This project, as you have stated already, it has been as a part of a discussion for quite some time now. I'm going to take a quick flip through the drawings. I'll kind of lay out the building, the site planning, and some of the aspects of that. And then, we can go through a Q&A if there's any concerns, questions from the board. Some of this stuff I'm not going to spend too much time on, but this just gives you an overall idea of what the front of the building is going to look like. It's a very simple building, block veneer, block backup, steel frame building, asphalt shingles. There's some other imagery later in the presentation, but just to kind of orientate everybody, as part of the agreement, the borough had agreed to lease to the district an area of about 7 acres out of the total 77-acre lot, which I have an image of later. Sorry if I'm not speaking into this as well as I should be. So the general overall layout is we have about a 10,000 square foot building. Here we have circulation around the building for the buses. We have a 4-bay vehicle. We have 4 vehicle bays, 3 of which are drive-through. 1 bay of which would be for a more long-term maintenance that has to be done. We also have what we're calling it's the business section where the administrators work day to day, the transportation folks, dispatch. There's a training room that's included there for the drivers. There's a lot of training that goes on throughout the year, especially for new drivers. Storage for parts and accessories. What we don't show here is what we call, when we bid this project out as an alternate bid, there was discussion of a fueling facility. Right now, I believe the borough kind of co-ops with the district to fill buses at a station offsite. With 72 buses, which is the ultimate build out for the property, that's a lot of fuel to be dispensed in one location. So that is not a definite piece of the plan at this point. I just want to make that clear. It's an expensive incurrence for the district. We take the alternate bid as part of the public bidding process to find out what that's worth. And if it's something that could be afforded, then the board would discuss that as to whether to accept that or not. So in the front area is parking for both the maintenance staff and the bus drivers. That's this larger lot. The administrative portion and guests, visitors would have the smaller lot in the front. We have several large retention basins for our storm runoff to meet all the applicable codes that we have to. We have 2 large ones in the front, and then we have smaller rain gardens in the back where the buses park. So this larger area in the back is the bus parking. This is the access road that is mentioned in the agreement for the potential for future borough use to a property behind us.
Why don't they just go out that way first? Excuse me, sir. You can take a chance. Let him do his observation.
So that serves as a dual purpose for this property, and that the cost of that is being incurred by the district as part of the project. All right, this is just some more imagery of the building. Again, you know, what we call CMU or concrete block facade, asphalt shingles, gutters, all our rainwater comes down, is collected, that goes to the underground storage system. So this is just this is part of our documentation. This just identifies the existing site area that we're working with, right? That's it's just slightly over 7 acres. I believe it's 7.02. Just while I'm fumbling with the drawings here, right now, currently the district has buses parked around the district. And that's part of the reason for the importance of this facility is it's a matter of efficiency and fuel and having a place to do these repairs that they don't have right now. So this is kind of an overall, some overall imagery of the site, right? This is, if you can see this in your handout or on this board, there's a blue line around here. That is the 77-acre parcel of which we were leased the 7 acres in this bottom corner. Okay, I put some dimensions on here so you get a feel for how far we are off of lot lines. We are hugging the western lot line. We have about 740 feet from our property line to the boundary of the 77-acre site, right? And from the area about where our buses are going to be parked, we're at about 860, just to give you an idea. So 3 football fields, about that to the property line. You have the DuPont Parlin site. You've got the Center for Early Childhood Learning. And then in the very back of the site is the site of the high school. So a couple of these drawings coming up are going to look very similar. This is our general construction plan. This talks about the different parts of the site, what they're made of, you know, where we have macadam. We have the parking area. That's also macadam here. These shaded areas, these are your retention basins, along with the strips. Here in between the parking, we also have one around the side. And again, those are used for collecting water runoff so that we're not discharging any more water runoff than we're allowed to into the natural system. The retention system actually holds the water underground until it reaches a point that it spills over only what it needs to evacuate that water. This is sort of a cleaner plan, shows the parking layout. It's a grading plan. I'm going to skip over this. This just talks about how we're going to grade the site so that we drain properly. This one here, this actually shows the retention basins, right? So we have 4 large ones, and then we have a couple of pipes on the site that collect water. And again, that's to retain the water so that we're not overcharging the existing storm system. So I included a landscape plan. I know one of the concerns is trees, and we're all concerned about trees. This is obviously, this type of site has to be cleared for the expansive parking that they need for the buses. Based on our calculations, we're looking at probably 350 to 400 trees that are coming out of our 7 acres, right? As part of our new landscape plan, we're putting back about 110 plus additional plantings around the building and on the site. These retention basins are actually green retention basins, so they'll have media in them that grows. And then this is just a layout of the building. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but there's pretty much a dividing line right here. This is the vehicle bays for repairs. There are some public bathrooms if this hosts any public events in the future. We've got the dispatch area, the training area, and in the back we have storage and a toilet strictly for the vehicle workers. There is a small mezzanine upstairs that contains a lot of our mechanical equipment. We're not putting anything on the roof. We're not putting anything on the ground except for one unit in the back that's very small. So everything will be contained within the building. And lastly, this is just some more imagery of the building to show massing. So overhead doors at the bays, a modest, rather modest entrance just to identify the building. We do have a couple of canopies that are, again, alternate bids that we're looking at, both for the fueling island and a storage area in the back that's gated and can be secured. Yeah. So of environmental concern, we have looked at the use of EV buses, electric buses. We are planning the infrastructure for that right now to be able to run the cabling out to the parking area.
Everyone, please, everyone will have a chance to say their piece, but we have to maintain the floor. So let him speak and no shouting out.
How are we gonna work asking the questions? Because is it just gonna be random? We shout out or?
No. You'll each have a chance to come up and ask questions and make your comments at the podium. Okay?
Thank you.
You got it. Okay.
So, yeah, I just wanted to speak to that, briefly, that that was a consideration. EV buses, electric buses are extremely expensive right now, as well as the infrastructure to put that in. But there is a interest in that in the future. So we are putting the pathways underground to be able to put future charging stations in for a portion of those buses.
Anything else, or?
No, I think that's the overall.
Anyone on the board have any questions, comments? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation and for all of the materials. When the borough sent out a survey about issues of paramount importance to our community, Over 70% of those respondents did respond that their biggest issues were traffic, conditions of our Parks and Rec facilities, and environmental quality and protection. And 2/3 of those respondents have lived here in Sayreville for at least 20 or more years. In the collateral provided to this planning board, it stated that the proposed bus depot can accommodate 85 buses and may also include a fueling station. Of paramount importance to our residents, obviously, as stated in our surveying, was traffic. Can you please describe the scope of the traffic study that was conducted by either the Board of Education or the Borough Council so that our residents can be given a deeper look at how that bus depot would impact traffic?
I can't quote from the traffic study at this point, no.
Is there someone who can?
Not with us tonight, no.
That's unfortunate because we get this opportunity to talk and review and make recommendations. So there's no one that can speak to the impact of traffic in our community with this project. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I can speak to the fact that it's not going to be as bad as it is if the buses were at the high school.
All right,
Hang on one second, folks.
Please, you get your chance.
So, you know,
Could you repeat your answer, please?
we feel that this site is remote enough, right? And the Cheesequake Road is large enough to
Please.
handle.
Order. Please, let him speak and you'll get your chance. Please, go ahead. Please.
We don't believe, in our professional opinion, that the traffic is going to be a major concern here.
Is there
Okay.
is there a traffic study specifically that was conducted in regards to this project?
Should never have been leased.
You folks, I am as big a fan of commenting in the public portion for hot button issues. I promise you, at the end of this meeting, there is an open session for public portion and public comment. Everyone who would like to speak will have a chance to speak without interruption at the microphone, as the chairman has stated.
I do not believe that a traffic study has been completed, no.
Okay, so a traffic study was not completed for the project. Okay, can you please describe the scope of the environmental assessment that was generated by either the Board of Education or the Borough Council in regards to the bus depot?
So the environmental assessment that was done by our team consisted of a grading survey to develop stormwater management. Can you speak to that? We have our site engineer is here as well tonight. If you can speak to the study.
Yeah, Derek Jordan with Colliers Engineering and Design. We did it. Yeah, it was a really sort of a basic environmental review of the existing site just to see if there were any constraints on the site, either DEP, wetlands, or such that would prevent the construction of this site. In terms of analysis of what is going to be built or generated, additional air quality as a result of what's built, we didn't study that. It was a study of the existing conditions and the prior uses and how those impact development on our site.
So am I correct in understanding that there was no environmental study commission that would study the results of 85 buses in that area, producing exhaust? And
I know we did not do that, no.
so the answer to that is no. Was there any study commissioned that would look at displacement of native animals in that area?
No, part of us was we looked at threatened and endangered to see if those were, and there's none listed on the site.
Mhm.
So when did the buses go out? When did they return? What's the operating hours of the facility?
So I don't have exact hours, but I believe drivers usually are there between 5:30 and 6 to start their day. They have their initial runs in the morning. They're staggered based on, where they're going, how far they're going. Some return, most return during the lunch hour, where they'll have their lunch at the facility, and then they're off for their afternoon runs for pickups, and then any buses that may be out late for sports or extracurricular activities.
What direction down Cheesequake are they generally going? Are they going toward Bordentown or are they going toward Minnesink?
That I'm not sure. Pat, do you? Both?
Because you understand there's new warehouses that are going up down toward Minnesink. Are you
I do.
familiar with that? And there's going to be a lot more tractor trailer traffic down that road. The concerns we have, and anyone living within 2 miles of that transportation complex and the schools, is the traffic is unbearable in the afternoon. In fact, I was trying to get on Ernst Road today. Ernst Road around 3:20 was backed up all the way past Washington toward Bordentown Avenue, toward the intersection. Are the buses going to be going down Bordentown for the most part to return to the complex, or are they going to be going up Washington and snaking through Minnesink?
Pat, can you respond to that one?
Please, everybody's
Please.
gonna get a chance to talk. It's not fair to them if you yell from the audience, the same way when you're speaking, I'm sure you don't want them yelling in the middle of your conversation. So not only will this go more smoother, but let's just show each other some common courtesy. Just let them answer the questions, make a note in your head, and when it's your turn to come up, if you want to address that comment, that's the better way to handle it. If everybody just yells from the audience, this is not going to be constructive. Please.
We're trying hard, but we're angry.
I'm not saying that you don't have a right to be or you can be, but that's not the way to show it. Is
We're
be,
not getting answers.
again, ma'am, I don't want to have a dialogue from the dais. I'm just asking if everybody could just save their comments. I promise you, the board wants to hear your comments as much as they want to hear the Board of Ed's presentation. We're not going anywhere. Everybody will get a chance to talk, we promise you, but there's a better way to handle it than just yelling from the audience. So please, just keep a mental note and you'll get a chance to talk. I know you're trying, please, thank you.
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking where the traffic will be coming from, returning back to the bus complex?
Yes.
So in the mornings, the buses will be returning to the complex from the various 4 elementary schools throughout Sayreville. And then at the end of the day, they will be returning to the bus yard from the last drop off of the students that attend the various elementary schools throughout Sayreville.
Are they taking Ernst Road and making a right on Bordentown to get to Cheesequake? Or are they going up Washington Road and making a left on Minnesink to get to
It will
Cheesequake?
depend on where they were coming from. So for example, if you're talking about coming from the Wilson School, then they are going to come from that side of Sayreville and come
Okay.
down Cheesequake Road. If they're coming from Eisenhower, they'll be coming from the other side.
Sure.
I think the public concern is. Damn it, excuse me, Mayor. And we're, a lot of people on here are on the public side. Not helping us by speaking, we're also trying to work. So, and be quiet. Public concern is that the buses are gonna sit in the traffic on Ernst Road and wanna take a turn, like I do if I'm in my car, try to find an alternate route. Are we gonna have 80, how many buses we have here? Let's see,
I think that the total we talked about was 72.
we have 72 buses. Up to 85. Are we gonna have 72 to 85 buses turning into Laurel Park? Going across Pine Tree? and go over to Kendall Drive?
I would say for the most part, no. They're going to travel the main roads.
Is there any way to impose restriction on using the neighborhood as a?
On buses when they have to go into the
To them.
Ma'am, please, we'll have to clear the room for the public if we can't maintain decorum. So please, let everyone have a chance and no yelling out, please.
Way to impose restrictions to limit essence through.
Yeah, I'm not aware if that's anything that, would be imposed on us. I mean, we could certainly
And we do try to spread our buses out so we're not on the main roads. When I say main roads and main thoroughfare, we try to spread them out so we're not all sitting in traffic. We don't want to sit in traffic just as much as anybody else does. It's Ernstine Road right now and Washington Road. All of our buses are going there. They're all going right there. That's all concentrated in that area. It's not much. I don't see how anything's going to solve that issue over in Ernstine Road. I mean, the traffic is horrendous there.
Right,
Sir-
I think the public's worried about you taking, the buses are taking tertiary routes rather than the main and secondary.
We don't transition through Laurel Park unless we have to. I can't speak for the other vehicles that attend the other school over there. They have nothing to do with us. We do get complaints on those all the time. They're not our buses. We have no control over them.
Just identify who you're speaking so the minutes would just reflect.
Sure. My name is Patrick Cerniglia. I'm the Director of Transportation for Saraville Board of Ed.
Thank you.
So I think one of my main concerns is the buses that are going to be going down Ernstine and the buses that are going to be going up Bordentown, which I envision is going to be a lot more. That road can't handle any more load. People are going to be snaking through. You're going to force the other traffic up through Laurel Park. It's going to create a nightmare. And that's.
You don't know the answer to that any more than I do.
Well, part of the problem with this is that, from a planning perspective, and I know the people in front of me here from the board aren't to blame, but from a planning perspective, the school system wasn't planned out properly. Just look at where the high school and the middle school are. It's a nightmare. It's a traffic nightmare. And all of those people within the 2-mile radius, they don't get buses unless you pay, I think, $600. So you're adding more cars on there because people aren't getting their busing. And if you look at that area, it's a heavily populated, heavily traveled area in the borough. You've got the high school, the middle school, you've got Kennedy Park, you've got the only supermarket, you've got the intersection of Bordentown and Ernstine Road and the overpass, then you've got all the traffic on Washington. It's a disproportionate load on that area of the town for the people who live in Laurel Park, President Park, Woodside, everyone bears the brunt of that. How come this transportation complex wasn't located somewhere outside the epicenter? I know you have buses in the high school parking lot and you're going down Washington Road for the most part, but those buses aren't going to be going down Bordentown and making the right up, going down Ernstine and making the right up Bordentown and trying to get through under the overpass. So what other sites did you have besides putting this right in an over congested area of the town?
And I guess I can answer that question for you. And for the record, I'm Richard Labian, the superintendent of schools. We did have another location on school property. You alluded to it in your introduction. We had a joint public meeting, the first joint public meeting, I believe, in history with the Borough Council and the Board of Education. This was not our first choice, nor was our second choice. We came together. The former borough business administrator during the latter part of the meeting was the one that recommended this place. In fact, the former borough administrator went ahead and told us that if we agreed to this place, they would agree to removing the trees, which is why that is in the agreement. There were several other locations, and I'm sure your engineer will tell you that we were given opportunities to select from. Some of which we were told, no, you can't have those places. We were told to look at them, but we couldn't have them. So we decided on this particular place, and we went ahead and signed a memorandum of agreement for this particular place with everything that you spoke about earlier that's in that promissory binding document. With regard to the buses, Saraville has always had the same number of buses on the roads. Period. No, they have the same. The only difference is now our drivers are the ones driving them, and we are the ones owning them. And if you've been around for the past 10 years, you know why we did that. I'll give you one example of a parent that assaulted one of our bus drivers because he claimed the bus driver wasn't going the right way because it was a vendor, pulled the bus over and attempted to board the bus. That's how crazy it got. So we as a school district, 5 years ago, very publicly made it our mission to begin to purchase more buses so that we could transport our students ourselves. Because we knew that our drivers, who by the way are members of this community, would take far better care of our children, your children, than the vendors that were transporting them. But it did not change the number of buses on those roads. It just changed where they were coming from initially and where they were going to in the end. Right now, we are transporting 95% of our kids. We are 6 buses short of that 72. We have our buses scattered over everywhere. You've been to the high school. There are a number of them there, but they're only on one side of the high school because of an agreement that we have with a neighbor. They're at our middle school, which is occupying space for our staff to park. We can't park all of our staff at the middle school because we have buses there. Our children at the Samso Upper Elementary School cannot have recess outside on their playground area because we have buses parked there. This transportation complex has been part of our long-range facilities plan for 5 years. We have funded it ourselves, and we are ready to go ahead and do this. We had plans to do it on school property, but because of the community resistance toward that, we were agreeable to where the council asked us to build it. I just need to set the record straight with that. So when you ask if we did a traffic study, no, we didn't. We were told this was the place we could build it. So we did not do a traffic study. When you ask, did we do a study on the environmental impact of all those buses there? No, we did not. Because this was the parcel of land that we were told we could have. And they even sweetened the pot by saying, we'll take down those trees for you if you take this parcel of land. And again, Mr. Cornell's right there. I was at the meeting asking all these questions.
Please, ma'am, please.
And one of the things we
Let him
asked was,
speak.
would there be remediation to that land? Would we have to remediate that land? I believe, Mr. Cornell, you said at that time, no. There would be no need to remediate the land. We also took the time to contact the people that eventually gave the land to the borough, that's DuPont. And we worked with DuPont to make sure that we were following all the environmental recommendations that they made, that they had set forth in the giving of the land to the borough. So we've done everything we have been required to do to make this work. We understood that the place we wanted, that first transportation complex, was a place that the community did not want us to put it at. But we need a transportation complex. Our students deserve to be driven to school safely by our drivers, the best people for that. Our transportation department workers, our drivers, our bus aides, our mechanics deserve a place to hang their hats, to go to park their car safely, to be able to go into a bus that they know has been maintained appropriately. They deserve that. And that's what this complex is doing. But I'll go back to your initial question about the congestion. The congestion is what it is on Ernst and Washington Road. There have always been the same number of buses. Yes, those buses now will be leaving at approximately 6:30 in the morning to go to their first routes for the high school and preschool. They'll be returning sometime around 4:30 when they finish their elementary runs. And yes, they will be taking some access point from Washington Road if they're on that side of town, down Minnesink, down to Cheesequig, or they'll be taking Bordentown up Cheesequig if they're going in that direction.
Dr. Labby, no one is questioning the need for the facility. I think a lot of people were shocked at where it was located and how little public notice there was of when the Board of Ed approved the location and when the council approved the memorandum of understanding. We know that, when there's things that are important, there's a big announcements everywhere, all these different things. This one, no one really knew about. I was actually taken aback. I didn't know there was a memorandum of understanding between the Board of Ed and the council. But as I said before, all of the elected officials have determined it's going there. So it's going there. We can't stop that. An election is coming up. People can consider that, but this is what the elected officials want.
So then, Mr. Mueller, why was it that you or somebody on this board, this is the only reason why I'm answering. Someone from this board just asked, what was the decision? Why did you choose to build this complex here? And that's why I'm responding to this. I was under the impression that that's not the purpose of this meeting. I was under the impression the purpose of this meeting was for our architect and our engineer to answer any questions that you have about the actual facility or any questions that the public have. But when you hadn't asked that question, I felt like I had to give you a response to it.
Well, Dr. Labby, I mean, the purpose of the presentation here is not just to physically remark on the architecture of the building or to learn the site plans. It's also to talk about the work that each of the people on this dais have done to recommit to our master plan moving forward and your complex and the way that it adheres to our long-term planning goals and land usage goals. So yes, absolutely. The goal here is to understand the complex and give the public an opportunity to comment, but it is also to see if this project adheres to what we are trying to do in a long-term way.
And Mr. I don't have a problem with that, but I think that's a better question that you should be asking to the council.
We don't have the council here, Dr. Labby, but I could tell you that we are allowed to probe into whether the transportation complex fits within the municipal master plan and our land use plan element. And I'm saying that where you're going to put it is already an over-congested, overdeveloped area that's going to create more problems. And I know it doesn't matter for a lot of other people in the borough. For the people who live within 2 miles, it's going to be even worse traveling around there. But I just want to be clear. You're saying that Cheesequake Road was the only viable site that the council was offering you.
What I'm telling you is this is, and I'm not telling you anything that you can't just go on video and watch. It's on our website. It's on the Borough Council website. Go ahead and watch the video. If you want to learn more about what transpired, it's all on video. What I'm telling you is this is, we were given options, and Mr. Cornell can go ahead and confirm that. We were given options all around the borough. And we selected several that the borough was not in agreement with. This is the one, this wasn't even one of those that were on the list. And the former business administrator said, well, wait a minute, I have an idea. Why don't I have a place where I think you can build this? Watch the video. And I said, first thing I said was, that's all wooded, that's all woodland. Are you kidding me? That's all woodland. We're gonna cut all those trees down, and that's gonna cost far more than we budgeted. We didn't budget to take down trees and remove stumps and things like that. That's not what we budgeted for. We budgeted for the location that we were going to have it at. And one of the things that we did look at was, how much do we have to clear? How much infrastructure do we have to work with in that particular place? I want to add one more thing that I think is important to note. We're putting that access road there, and we are, I would say 1/3 of the cost of the site development of this is just for bringing those utilities in. But not only bringing them in, we're bringing them to the edge of that road. Do you know why we're bringing them to the edge of that road? Do you know, Mr. Mueller?
You're going to be using it for the borough? The borough wants to put, yeah.
Is potentially going to use it for a new DPW plant. That's why we agreed to bring the utilities to the end of that access road.
Do you know how much it would cost to raise 5 acres of forest?
Do I know how much it would cost? No, I don't know.
I mean, it's significant, and the borough's apparently, listen, you guys cut a deal with the borough, that's fine. We're just trying to figure out so we can make a proper recommendation based upon our master plan and sort of, just interject some common sense into where we put our development and say, all right, this is one area of the borough that is a nightmare to begin with everything there. I think the mayor described Kennedy Park as Central Park. It's the hub. Why are we going to, burden that system even more? And I know you're telling me about the buses, but it is going to be a major, it's going to be a safety and health issue when people can't get down Ernston Road because you have lines of buses that are trying to get to the intersection.
But that's never going to change, sir. You're always going to have our buses on Ernston Road, and you're always going to have our buses on Washington Road, and you're always going to have our buses on Main Street.
But not-
Because those are the three main arteries. And Mr.
Please, let him speak.
And again, I'll answer that question. Mr. Siniglia said that. The only time there is another school district's buses that sometimes traverse through Kendall Park because it's the Parlin area, and we share that with that other school district. Our buses, our drivers have been directed by our director to use the main arteries when getting to places. Now, obviously, if we're going into that neighborhood to pick up children, we're going to have to traverse through it. But we're not using small neighborhoods to cut through areas. Yes, we have to use, they know that they need to use those main arteries unless they're going into those neighborhoods to pick children up. But you're always going to have our buses, sir, on those three main arteries of this town.
What about the cost of the project? Because I think we're all sort of shell shocked when we got our tax bill with the whole cool to school thing. What is this going to go up also, this $9,498,472?
All this money has been generated in our capital reserve. So again, we're pretty lucky in Sayreville to have a brilliant business administrator. So over the past 10 years, we have been putting money away in our capital reserve for this. So this is not going to cost the taxpayer anything because the money is already there.
How long is it going to take to build, you think?
This is now a question probably for our architect. I can try to give an answer. We're hoping that we'll at least get the site developed by September of 2024.
Correct.
And so I'm more aggressive than this, so he's looking at me like, yeah. And hopefully have the complex, because we're going to go out to bid for the complex pretty soon. We're hoping to have that done maybe by January.
Yeah, we're actually looking at end of December as our
January
completion date.
2025. We
24.
24, December 24 then.
December of 24 is our projected completion for the building itself, yes.
Again, we need to get our buses right now out of our schools. It breaks my heart that my 4th and 5th graders aren't able to go out on the blacktop and have their recess because I have our buses there. It breaks my heart that my staff members at the middle school can't park their vehicles there because I have buses there. So we're patiently waiting for the opportunity to do this. And don't get me wrong, we're very grateful to the council for affording us a place where we can put our transportation complex. We're not tone deaf. Mr. Miller, we know that wherever we put this, there are going to be people in that area that don't want it. Nobody wants to have a transportation complex next to their residence. So we know that. But I do need to mention that we are grateful that the council met with us and we were able to work out what we feel was a good agreement. And now we finally have a place to have our buses stored safely in a place where we can repair them efficiently without sending them out to vendor, by the way, which costs taxpayers money. The more buses that we maintain in district, the less money it costs us to maintain them. So there are a lot of benefits to what we're doing, and we are grateful to the council for that.
Are there going to be sidewalks abutting Cheesequake adjacent to the bus facility, the transportation complex? And do you envision any type of crosswalk? I know you're close to the aquatic center, pretty close. You're right across the street from. Do you envision any spillover parking into the aquatic center from the transportation complex?
No, it's actually the Center for Lifelong Learning is closer
Yes.
to us across the street. And then the swimming center is beyond that.
Yes.
Swimming center is part of the center.
Yes, that's how I refer to it, as the aquatic center.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for Dr. Labby or any of the Board of Ed?
Just to answer one of the last question you had about sidewalks. So we are not proposing sidewalks along Cheesequake Road. The last thing that we want is to generate pedestrian traffic by our transportation complex. It was more of a safety concern. We also needed that frontage for our retention and to also bring back plantings and trees along the roadscape.
My concern is that the aquatic center, as I refer to it, it's a gym. People get memberships that if any of you drivers have, go there during the lunch break to exercise, people getting across Cheesequake Road, that it's safe if they're going to be walking over and using the facilities and coming back.
Yeah, this facility, the intent is to not be sharing parking for adjacent properties.
Does anyone else have any questions, comments from the board?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Just wanted to address a few comments.
Councilman first, sure.
Sorry, can you all hear me?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, you don't mind if I take a moment to say a few words if possible, or is there someone else speaking?
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, additional context, maybe from the council perspective as well, as I had the privilege of being a part of the initial meeting where this deal was brokered through our business administrator and legal professionals. And, from the council perspective, the main pitch, was primarily focusing on the physical feasibility of the site. And, I believe that it was our hope and anticipation that moving forward, the Board of Education would conduct a traffic assessment and to at least, bring forward, to the planning board what their ideas were, more information in regards to, let's say, the peak traffic times and maybe ways in which they would be able to manage, traffic flows during the peak traffic times, more information regarding to perhaps the entrance and exit points and, different ways in which mitigation measures can be put in place, whether it's turning lanes or traffic signals or unique ideas in which they would be coordinating with local authorities, be it our police department. I mean, these were not things that the Borough Council anticipated to really review, but our idea was to give them options that, from a physical feasibility standpoint, beyond the wetlands and spaces that weren't possible to actually build upon. So we didn't necessarily go into all the details as a council on the community concerns and more specifically to the traffic and the different bus routes and the schedules and our hope, and even from the public safety standpoint as well, the different walkways as you just brought up, Mr. Chairman, or, those perspectives. So that's why we're grateful for this conversation and this discourse, and hopefully that can be put into context as well.
Thank you, Councilman. I think, part of the issue here is that we probably should have had this conversation about a year and a half ago, and we're having it now. And that's part of the problem. And, I don't know the memorandum of understanding. It's not a lease, but I'm not going to comment on what can be negotiated as part of that lease. If there's any way to ameliorate any of these traffic issues or do a traffic study, we're going to have a lot more tractor trailers coming on Cheesequake. And again, that wasn't something that this planning board did. That was a redevelopment project that was approved by the borough. But that area is going to be, in my view, and I hope I'm wrong, it's going to be a nightmare. And there's nothing that anyone can do about it here. So we can talk about it and we can talk about what may have been good or what we maybe should have done before we entered into an MOU and different things, but we're here now and there's nothing we can do. Mr. Pizzata, you had a question?
Yeah, I had some specific questions. We will be, taking the time to put together a report with recommendations. I have questions about the way that this project adheres to our master plan. The 2023 reexamination plan lists 8 specific goals from the 2013 master plan that are being carried over. For those in attendance, it is the guiding light that we all sort of adhere to in terms of planning our community. The goals that I have specific questions about are our second goal, which is to continue to encourage aesthetic and site improvements in the borough's major commercial and industrial areas. And then the third is to encourage and promote an improved visual environment and the preservation of natural systems and environmentally sensitive areas. Can someone from the board team here help this board and our residents understand how the proposed transportation complex will either promote an improved visual environment or the preservation of natural systems and environmentally sensitive areas? No? Okay. The fifth item is to encourage the provision for cost-effective expansion of educational and cultural facilities. Does the Board of Education consider a $9.5 million bus depot to be a cost-effective expansion of an educational or cultural facility? Educational?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have a kid in that system, so I am grateful. The sixth item is to plan and implement the expansion and improvement of community facilities and programs that are consistent with a stable revenue base. Does the Board of Education consider the bus depot to be a community facility?
It certainly can act as that. This training room that we have can support 70 to 80 people. So there's definitely that option there that the board, obviously under their discretion, could open that up for, public meeting space,
And our buses are
group
often,
space.
our buses are often used for many things for the community. I'll give you a great example. If you went on the ghost tours, we provided those buses at no cost to the borough for those. We've done those things before. We like to practice shared services. We have a great shared services program with the recreation department. We share our facilities. They share their facilities. I mentioned earlier, the reason why we're building an access road and the reason why we're paying all that money to connect those utilities and bring them all the way down to the end of that property is because we were told that that could be the future home of a brand new DPW plant. So again, that would answer your question about community.
Well, I asked because I also know that that site was potentially listed as a community center in conversation, and
I don't want to correct you, board member, but I believe that the last time we were told was that community center that you're referencing is where the ballparks are right now across the street, the adult ballparks, the adult softball fields. We were told back then that that area right there was going to be used potentially for that.
Okay. So in terms of the expansion and improvement of community facilities, what stable revenue is the transportation complex providing to the borough in that vein?
What stable revenue are we providing? Well, again, one of the things that we do is not only do we provide a shared service, but we do utilize our buses for revenue purposes as well. And that generates revenue, maybe not for the borough directly, but it's for the school district. And again, when it comes to residents' taxes, they're all coming out of the same pockets. So whether you're paying the school tax or whether you're paying the borough tax, it's coming out of the same taxpayer. So anything that we can do to generate revenue, we're doing. And one of the ways that we do try to generate revenue is through our busing services, which was another reason why we decided at that point, let's do our own busing. Also, it is much less cost expensive to go ahead and provide our own transportation than use some of these vendors now who are downright price gouging school districts. You probably heard about it in various news reports on how these bus vendors are taking advantage of school districts, especially after the pandemic. We're not one of those districts. You might have also heard how many districts have been wiped out because they can't bus kids for athletics. They can't bus kids for this. They can't bus kids for that. I believe Edison this year couldn't bus close to 1,000 kids at one point because of these bus vendors. We don't have that issue here because we're doing it ourselves. So yes, we are trying to generate revenue for the school district, which in essence is indirectly generating revenue for the borough. But we're also saving money by doing this as well.
Understood. The seventh tenet of our master plan is to plan and implement the improvement of circulation and transportation facilities and other infrastructure elements consistent with a stable revenue base. Does the Board of Education consider the bus depot to be a transportation facility? And if so, what stable revenue is that depot providing?
Well, I mean, I feel like that's a trick question.
It's
Is
just
it a
looking at our master-
transportation facility? Of course, it's a transportation facility. Is it a public transportation facility? Is that your question? Or is it, you're just asking me, is it a transportation facility?
I'm just doing my due diligence as a member of the planning board to make sure that
But
the
I wanna know, I mean,
recommendations
'cause
that we
it is
issue
kind of
are
tricky.
consistent with that
You're
master
asking me
plan.
If it's a public transportation facility, no. But if it's a transportation facility, obviously it is.
Okay.
Two more questions. Administrative offices, how many administrative folks are you going to have there? Not bus drivers too? Okay. The buses that are going to be vacating the high school, is that going to open up for student parking?
Yes.
Okay, so right now, they park in Kennedy Park. I mean, I think they park in Kennedy Park.
There's a couple of things, and
Park on
again,
the-
I want to, in the spirit of full disclosure, part of the reason why some of our kids are not parking at the high school right now. First of all, we've only ever allowed 100 kids to park in the parking lot at the high school. But the greater issue is we are currently at a standstill with a solar power purchase agreement with our financer, who basically has shut down all work at the high school. And they have supplies in one area of that parking lot that we are trying to, once that area is vacated by them, and that's a legal proceeding, we'll be able to open up parking again for our students. What it's going to alleviate us is all those buses, because of a settlement agreement with a neighbor over there, none of those buses can be on the east side of the high school. They have to be on the west side of the high school. But that's the athletic side of the high school. So once those buses vacate that area, then we'll be able to put more parking in that place, especially during athletic events, graduations, athletic activities and so forth. People will be able to park over there again. They can't right now because our buses are there.
Any other questions or issues before I take a motion to open to the public?
I don't want to take the public's
Yeah,
time.
They've been patient.
Yeah, I just have to say, as a resident of Sayreville, as a member of the Environmental Commission, as a member of our planning board, should this application have come before us, should the planning board have had the authority to approve or deny the application, on the grounds that the answers provided here are inconsistent with our master plan, that is the touchstone against which we base all of our forward-facing gaze for our borough's future. My vote would be no. I love my son. I love his classmates. I love Miss Laura, his bus driver. I love all of those kids. And I know every person on this dais and every person here in the gallery feels the same way. That isn't the issue of contention here. I will add that while I'm grateful that the Board of Education has finally acquiesced and followed the statute regarding its required presentation to this planning board, I am discouraged by the lack of transparency and community interaction with which the specific location of this project was selected. I think that the Sayreville residents whose voices all play a part in the future that our children know, I think those folks deserved a little bit better than they got here. So.
Yeah. I'll just add to that I understand what happened with the first location. I understand there was a huge public uproar about it. I'm not convinced that this is the best place for it. Maybe it is. I just don't know. We haven't had our professionals review the entire set of plans. We don't, this isn't a site plan application where we can do a technical review of everything and figure out if this is really the best place for it. We need the transportation complex. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's commendable that the Board of Ed is moving forward with it. I just don't know that this is the best place. It doesn't seem like it is, but I don't know. And I think, entering into a lease, if this was Board of Ed property, you could say, hey, you might disagree, Chairman Mueller, but there's nothing you can do. The fact that we own the land and we can lease it, and that gives us some amount of control. We should have had a determination of whether this was the best place for it before we entered into a potential binding lease. So With that, unless anyone else has any comments, I'll entertain a motion to open to the public. Okay, so why don't we start, Mr. Robinson, you want to come up?
Thank you
If you don't
address.
If you wouldn't mind, we're not swearing in anyone under oath, but if you could just give us your name and
Yeah, I'm
address.
certainly going to do
Sure.
that. First, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your excellent questions. You, Mr. Sposato, for your excellent questions. My name is Jim Robinson. I'm a former member of the Saraville Board of Education, former Planning Board Chairman, former President of New Jersey Planning Officials. And I just have to comment on some things before I get into the details, because I want to set the record straight. You said the time that you should have come before us was a year and a half ago. Well, I'll tell you, I couldn't agree more. And the statute says the same thing. And I first got involved in this project. It's not in my neighborhood either on Cheesequake Road or in Morgan. I first got involved when residents in Morgan called me and asked me for some help. And one of the first things I did was send Dr. Labby and the Board of Education a copy of 4055D-31. And you read the second part of that statute on capital review. And let me just say this, I've sent it 3 more times since then, okay? Certainly to Dr. Labby and perhaps to members of the Board of Education. But let me just read the first part of that statute, okay? Whenever the planning board shall have adopted any portion of the master plan, the governing body or any other public agency having jurisdiction over the matter, before taking any action necessitating the expenditure of public funds, incidental to the location, character, or extent of such project, shall refer the action involving such specific project to the planning board for review and recommendation in conjunction with such master plan, and shall not act thereon without such recommendation or until 45 days have elapsed, blah, 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 blah. That's the first part, okay? The second part I want to say is this. While I appreciate your comments, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit about whether they had to come before the board if it wasn't borough property. According to this part, they do. And I will tell you this, when I was the chairman of the planning board, the Board of Education came before the planning board. The borough came before the planning board. The housing authority came before the planning board with projects for review. And I will tell you this, why that's so important. And it's kind of germane, actually. The council, years ago in the 80s, wanted to put the first aid squad over here where the public works garage was. And I said, whoa, that's not a good idea. You're going to have people speeding in and speeding out, kids in the playground over here playing, ambulances racing out. Let's come before the planning board. And they came before the planning board on location, to talk about location, before they had drawn up any plans, before they had spent any money. And the planning board said, I remember saying this, you know, over here, you're actually closer to most of South River than you are to so much of Saraville. You ought to go back and take a look at a location. And they did, the council did. We talked about the area by DuPont. And Mayor McCormick called DuPont, said, you know, you have some property over there next to the post office. You think we can make an arrangement here? And I think it's a lease agreement. But they came before the planning board with that. And that saved taxpayers money, and it's a better location. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to say. 4 times I sent the statute to Dr. Labby. I had a conversation with the school board attorney a couple of weeks ago where I said, you got to do that. The form that they are required to fill out, the project schedule form from the state DOE, Department of Education. Item number 5, submission to the planning board. And the date filled in here is March of 2023. Now, you know, I don't want to indicate how old I am, but when I was in high school, I was in Dr. Parnell's philosophy class. If I was 7 months late with an assignment, there'd be hell to pay. There'd be a penalty. And so, you know,
Mr. Robinson, just.
I'm going to try and get to this.
No, can I just respond to one thing you said? And
Yeah,
just for full
certainly.
disclosure, there was a letter that was included, which was purportedly sent to the planning board in March of 2023. We've checked our records. We didn't get it. I don't know what happened. So I just want to
Can I speak to that?
Well,
So,
when I'm done,
Yeah,
you can
when
speak
you
to that.
stop, yeah. But I just
If
wanted
you-
to set the record
But
because
I
I
will
don't
tell
want you
you-
to.
Not only
Go ahead.
did I tell Dr. Labby it was required and cite the statute, he responded to me that it wasn't. I had a conversation with a Board of Education member who said to me, no, we don't have to do that. And I'll tell you something else. I get a few emails from folks saying, why are you against the kids? Why are you against the school board? I want to tell you what I did for the last year and a half. For the last year and a half, I fought a pilot for a mega warehouse on Cheesequake Road because if that pilot had gone through, it would have deprived the Board of Education of $1 million a year in taxes. So I have a concern for the education in this school system. So I don't want to hear that. But that being said, I'm glad they finally agreed. They're here before us so that we can talk about this $9.5 million project. And the other thing I heard was Dr. Labby talk about the 5-year capital plan. The second part of that statute, 4059D-31, talks about that educational facilities Educational Facilities and Financing Act says they should be coming before the planning board. If they have a 5-year plan, they should be before the planning board to talk about that 5-year plan so that they get your input, so that these folks are here and can give their input, and so we don't waste money. Okay. Now, having said that, I just want to give you a very little history. It took me a while to do some research here, and I sent some of you, and I posted on Facebook a story that I saw back in, I think it was in the newspaper in 2005. DuPont donated this property. It was finally effectuated in 2008. And the stated purpose in the release was for conservation, and the term nature preserve was used throughout that report. Now, while it was done, and Mayor O'Brien said, I happily accept this on behalf of the borough, it was never put on the open space inventory. The zoning was never changed from industrial. And the master plan that was done in 2013 never took that into account and changed it. And I understand a lot of the things from the 2013 master plan were never incorporated into the zoning, to the zoning ordinance during Mayor O'Brien's term here. So that is adding to the problem here. That's adding to the confusion that way back then, the borough never said this land is preserved. That was the intent. That's what everybody thought. That's what the press release that the mayor put out said. That ain't the case. Okay, and that's unfortunate. Now, I understand the question before the board. You know, there's the Pizzo Manton case, you know about that. You know that you're supposed to look at this with respect to the master plan and how it meshes with the master plan. And I know you have to do that. And I would say this, please use this as an example. I know Susan Gruel, a wonderful planning firm, is doing a new master plan. Please use this as a lesson and make sure that no property anywhere that is supposed to be and intended to be open space and is given to us for the purpose of being open space is ever allowed to be developed. Because right now that is zoned industrial. The master plan says it should be special economic development, but the zoning ordinance, I think, says it's industrial. So God knows what could happen. I'm glad we could see where on the property this would go. And I think it's 575 feet from the nearest home. Is that correct? Or nearest property line?
Yeah, so if you go from the property line out, we're talking about It's just under 750, 740 plus or
And how
minus.
far is it from the Walter Faith Ball Field property line?
I'm not familiar with the field. This here?
It's the, yeah, it's in the corner. It's the prime piece.
Right. So just kind of scaling off of here, it's probably about 300 feet,
So it's 300 feet from the
300 to
ballpark.
350.
Okay. All right. And I would expect that when the planning board makes their review, and I think people here will ask questions that we'll talk about lights, sound, noise, vibration, fumes, drainage, traffic, environmental concerns, the impact of tree removal, as well as the hours of operation. Now, in October, I sent Dr. Labby, we've had a number of emails going back and forth because this is has been a concern to me since that ill-advised proposal to put this at Slover School. I've had a concern about this. In October, Dr. Labby didn't tell me the number of trees that were going to be removed. Did you say 400?
We're estimating about 400, yes.
400. Now, one of the school board members told me the cost of removing trees is between $750,000 and $1 million just for tree removal. Is that accurate?
I can't speak to that specifically, but yes, it's probably in that range.
It's in that range.
That's what we estimated. That's what we thought when we had that joint meeting. I don't believe the total cost of the tree removal and the stump removal, I believe that was somewhere around $200,000. $300,000.
So the 750,
That was what, during that joint meeting, that's where you're getting that from. In the joint meeting, I was estimating when I was talking to the former business administrator and he was trying to convince us on the location, I basically said,
well,
this is going to cost probably around $750,000 to $1 million to do. Are you sure this is what you want to do?
a board member gave me that figure not too long ago, and she said that you had spoken about that, I think, at the June 24th meeting.
I don't know who you spoke to, and I don't want to get involved in the conversation that you had, but that was a conversation that we had during that joint meeting.
Okay.
But
and
the
we
actual
heard-
cost is something around $200,000 to $300,000.
Okay, I will tell you this. I've talked to members of the governing body, and one of the first questions I'm sorry, I should address you, Mr. Chair. One of the first questions I asked Dr. Labby is if there would be a fuel dispensing system on site, and at that time, the answer was no. I asked that question at a borough council meeting, and the council said they didn't think that they could continue to use the borough facilities, especially if they're going to be expanding. So I think we have to know that, and that should be part of the plan, and that should be part of your recommendation. And of course, when you're talking about underground storage tanks, the proximity to the well fields, I think, is important. So I think we have to take that into consideration. And Mr. Sposato, you talked about the wildlife on the property, so I won't go into that. I would ask, how often will the conference room be used? Or the training room, I'm sorry.
You're asking us.
I'm sorry?
Am I allowed to answer, Chairman? It's going to be used quite often for our drivers. However, we will be allowing other school districts that don't have a training facility to go ahead for revenue purposes and utilize it if they need it. In fact, again, back to the question about community. That's something, again, that I'm sure that we could enter into our shared services agreement if that space needed to be used by the borough for any type of training or any type of meeting purposes. That is something that we've always done. We will continue to do.
Okay, did I understand you to say other school
One
districts?
more thing you said,
I'm sorry?
Mr. Robinson, with
And
regards
Mr.
to the-
Robinson, we're bucking up on 15 minutes, and I,
Yeah, okay, all right.
and you
Well,
can sit down, I just want to let other people, and then you can come back up.
Certainly,
Yeah.
but I've been asking for this meeting for a year and a half.
I know.
Okay, and have been ignored. I came to the planning board, I came to the council. I have just a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
And I won't go into the traffic study then. But I did send that traffic study to Dr. Labby, the traffic study that was done for the Arsenal warehouses. So, and he thanked me for that. He's always very gracious in responding, but he has that traffic study. I sent it him quite a while ago. I'll be very happy to share it with anybody who wants to see it. I think I posted it online as a matter of fact. And my last question is other sites. I think I had suggested some other sites. I took about 2 or 3 days to go around and physically look at sites. I sent an email to at least to Dr. Labby, maybe to the board. And one of the sites and I specifically looked at sites that would not require the denuding of trees. And I asked Dr. Labby what the specs were, what the requirements. He told me what size, the size of the building, the size of the acreage, everything like that. So I spent a lot of time, I put a lot of time, effort, and energy into doing this. And I looked at some sites on the Main Street extension, which aren't near homes and wouldn't require trees to be taken down. I'm not so sure that a community center should be over at that other ball field on Cheesequake Road. That's something that ought to be looked at, that their trees are already gone there. That wouldn't impact the neighborhood quite as much. I mean, it's not the best location, but it's certainly better than this location. And the site that I had a few conversations with Dr. Labby about was coincidentally next to the first aid squad on DuPont-owned property. There's a big building there in the front. That building has a big red X on it. It's to be demolished. It's unsafe. It's from the 1900s. And DuPont has always been very cooperative and generous with the town. We got the first aid squad from them. If you drive back there or walk that property as I did, a lot of it is paved. There are no trees there. The only thing that would have to be taken down is the building. It is the only other thing I would disagree with you on. Location of the schools, that is the center of town. Now, maybe that creates traffic there, but the high school and junior high were placed there because they're equidistant. That is the geographic center of town. If you look at a map, you will see that. So I would just ask if the DuPont site was, how much consideration was the other DuPont site given?
Dr. Labby, would you
Much
like to respond?
consideration. In fact, I contacted DuPont and they said no.
That's not what you reported to me.
Hold on. You advised me of this. I looked into it. We
Mhm.
didn't have any correspondence after that.
Okay,
They said no.
okay.
In fact, I met with them and had lunch with them and they said no.
Okay.
And with regard to the fueling,
Sure, Dr.
initially, I did say, Mr. Robinson, during that public meeting that we had no intention of putting a fueling tank in. However, after the discussion came up about the fact that the borough wasn't sure if they were going to be able to fuel our buses, that's when, as Mr. Eves said earlier, we created an alternate for that just in case.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just,
Mr. Robinson, what
Yes.
would you have this board do? Given the state of affairs with the fact that Department of Education already issued the approval and there's a
that's why
memorandum
I'm
of
glad
understanding.
on this side and not on that side anymore, because, and when I sat there, the Pizzo Manton case hadn't come down, and those people who are board members know what Pizzo Manton says. Pizzo Manton says that you have to judge things based on the law and only the law, and not and standards that are written, and not on your feelings. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons that they should have been in here a year and a half ago, so that then you could have said, look, this is my feeling on this. I think you should go back to the drawing board. This is just a little bit better than the Slover School.
Mr. Chairman.
so-
Well, I mean,
If
you
I,
want to address the letter?
yeah,
Go ahead.
I want to clarify something here on
Go
the
ahead.
scheduling and why today and not a year ago. When we first started this project and began drafting all the documents that go to DOE, our standard, our procedure in our office is that when we send that to DOE, we simultaneously send those same documents to the planning board. That did not happen. Okay, I've spoken with Beth a number of times. We both did due diligence to go back and look for such documents. It does not appear that we sent that. And for that, I am gratefully, I'm greatly sorry that we are here now and not back then. It was a slip up. It wasn't anything intentional.
I appreciate that. Listen, mistakes happen. We understand. So go ahead. We understand it was a mistake.
I know my time is up, Chairman, but I want to just respond to that response.
Hang on.
I don't
Hold
know, I don't know how much that forgetting to send the plans cost the taxpayers. But what has been spent to date on this project?
I couldn't tell you total
Who can?
value.
Who can say what
Are you
has been
talking,
spent?
are you
to-
talking about professional fees and
Everything. What has been spent to date? Everything that has been spent to date on this project?
I don't have that number available at this,
Okay.
at this time.
Whatever that is, before that was spent, you should have been here for the input from the board and the public. And to quite simply answer your question, what do I think you should do? I think you should do the best you can for the people. I think you should do the best you can for the people. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Mr.
I'm
Robinson.
sorry I took so much
No,
time.
that's okay. I know you've been waiting. Hi, ma'am. Could you just
Hi.
state your name and address for the record, please?
Joylyn Ryan, you want the address too?
Please.
129 Kendall Drive. So I am directly affected by this project because it will be literally in my backyard.
It's referred to as Laurel Park where you live, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So right off Cheesequake is Kendall Drive. And we have a lot of people here who have backyards that this project will back right up to, especially if you put a public works building, as was suggested might happen later on, or tanks underground. That's extremely concerning. To you, sir, we love children. So when I'm a former teacher. So when you sit there repeatedly and say, I want my third graders to have lunch or recess.
Miss.
I'm sorry, and you're pulling,
Good to hear, and then-
sorry, and you're,
Glad to
well,
hear.
I'm referring this to him. And you're pulling the heartstrings. We want our community to know that we love all the children in our community. That doesn't make this the right spot for this. Okay, this is land that was owned by DuPont. Okay, DuPont gave this land that it not be built on for a reason. It's polluted. So if you want to talk about cost effectiveness, you might want to consider future litigation. You're putting a bus depot for children on land that is contaminated. Here, can we all see that? Is there a video? I called Governor Murphy's today, his office. I called the EAP. They will be opening a case on this very possibly. The EPA, I'm sorry, because this is not land that is supposed to be built on. Whoever authorized that completely jumped the rule that there's still copper. If you go back there, there's still copper flooring that DuPont put there and copper dust. Is that something you'll feel safe with your children? Really? You want a place to put a bus because you're tired of trying to find a place, a bus depot. You want the business. That doesn't make it the ethical thing to do for the children or for this community. Okay? You know, a long time ago, DuPont tried to make up for what they did. All right? But you're repeating that mistake because you don't have enough of an environmental guidance going on here that you know that it's even safe. You don't. And there's signs back there. There's signs back there in those woods that says environmental protection. It's not supposed to be touched. That was part of the deal with DuPont. So I would say to Governor Murphy, who I called today, to the EPA, I called Frank Pallone, our representative, and I begged them to get involved in this. Because A, it might not be safe for the children, which is future litigation. Two, this is a residential neighborhood. You could have chosen, or whomever was in charge, I'm not blaming you, you could have chosen an industrial area along Journey Mill Road. This is residential. So that means we're going to be exposed to the carbon monoxide, possible tanks underneath, your trucks and buses. How many of them? I'm sorry, how many?
We're planning for 72 to,
72 buses in our backyards, starting up at 5:30 in the morning, and the carbon monoxide? Well, that's another future litigation possibly. It is a bad place to put it. No matter who said it was a good place. And it's time for people to be ethical. You need to be ethical about this. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
miss.
if I,
Anyone else in person? Please, yep, come on up, miss.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Oh,
address
sure,
two
sure.
items?
One, come on up and we'll have him address it too. Go ahead.
Let me just clarify on the fuel tanks. Fuel tanks are not going to be buried in the ground. These are above ground fuel tanks. That's the proposal if it were to move forward. Secondly, I can't speak in a lot of detail to the DuPont property and the contamination. Okay. I'm not going to come over and I'm not going to come read your phone.
I'll make a copy of it for you.
No, that's okay. We have, the board and us, we have spoken about the DuPont property. And I'm not going to speak for Dr. Labby, right? But I believe there were conversations about that concern. There are monitoring wells out in that 77-acre area. They are not on our site. Okay, that was one of the first things we looked at was if they were there, do they still contain contamination? Can we get rid of them? There's no building on that. There's no building on that site.
Ma'am, please, let him respond.
Okay, I can't speak to the copper. There's no building on this site that we're looking at. Okay. As far as I understand, the ground wells have been monitored after DuPont put those in 25 years ago, I believe it was. And I believe, please don't quote me on this, that they have been monitored and have found to have levels below any cause for concern.
Just so we're clear, right now, the buses are at the high school, right? So that pollution is generating by our schools, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sam Self Elementary.
That's right, and Sam Cell in the back. Okay.
Well, Evelyn
Yeah, please
Smith.
state your name and
Yes,
address.
Evelyn Smith, 124 Kendall Drive. My
Welcome.
house is in the middle of Kendall and Pine Tree. If anybody knows about the traffic in Laurel Park, it's me. Okay, I've had several vehicles have been hit in front of my house because of people speeding. We call it Kendall Raceway because it's not just a drive, it's a raceway. People are, it's unbelievable. They're doing 50 miles an hour down this street. Okay, and you know, I don't care how much Mr. Levy says, the bus drivers are going to go through, and you have no right to tell them that the buses can't go through. Just like we can't tell the tractor trailers that they can't go through because that has been discussed because we don't want them coming through our neighborhood. Okay, but it's not within the law to be able to do that. We can't do it. I believe we can set a weight limit, but that's about it. We can't just blanket say no tractor trailers.
Did you have children that attended this local school?
I attended the local school.
Did you get a
from
bus?
that house.
Did-
Okay.
Do you get a bus in that area?
When I was in elementary school, I was bused.
Okay.
At the time, it was a junior high. Once it went to a junior high, then I did not get bused. So I drove from the end of Laurel Park all the way up Kendall and down the Black Path and then up a hill behind the middle school to get to the junior high at the time.
We understand the traffic issues in Laurel Park without the transportation complex. We understand that fully. And that's a lot of our concern. We don't want to generate any more traffic into your area. No one wants additional traffic in their area.
Okay,
We
but
understand that. We
You're talking
understand.
that, we have the buses at the high school and at the middle school and at Slover and all of the, you're not solving the problem. You're moving it, and you're moving it closer to our development. Okay? That's not a solution. However, you do have a solution. Okay? Because you said that you have to go by, just the standards of what, this is supposed to have. Well, you can say no because the rules were not followed. That immediately stops everything. You can say it was not followed properly, and so therefore it is not allowed, and we're not going to do it. Go back and start all over again and do it someplace that's not going to impact a neighborhood like ours, like the Main Street extension. There's plenty of room there. Okay, Journey Mill Road, plenty of room there. Okay, there are places where you're not going to be impacting the housing. Now, how far away did you say that the road going in was going to be from the houses on Kendall Drive?
The access road?
Yeah.
We're at about 1,200 square feet to the west side of the property.
From the back of the houses on Kendall Drive?
Well, no, we're taking it based on the property line. The houses are set back even further from that.
Right, because once before, someone wanted to build houses behind the houses on Kendall Drive, and we fought them. And one of the reasons was because there was no way to get a road in there that wasn't going to be in, the egress of the houses that are already there. So, but the idea of, and where is the park still there? I mean, have you taken out the park?
No, there's no park that we're taking out. There's two ballparks. There's one here and that remains, as well as the one across the street on the corner.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that was.
Yeah, there's a
Laurel
cutout
Park
here in that
Park.
site specifically for the
Yes, the
baseball.
Laurel Park, which I spent a lot of time in the last 60 some odd years since I've lived in, at that house, right in the corner of Kendall and Pine Tree. And so I have a good view of most things that have gone on in my neighborhood.
Yes, I
So-
just wanted to address one thing you said,
Yes.
just so that the public is aware and the board members are aware. This board doesn't have the right to say no to anything. In the same way, it doesn't have the right to say yes to anything. This is, in the parlance of land use, this is a courtesy review. They come before us in order to let us know what they're planning on doing. The board's function is to figure out if it's consistent with the master plan and make recommendations, in this case, to the Department of Education. The Department of Education can agree with those recommendations, say, we don't care about your recommendations. It's not binding on anyone.
Okay, but
So
before they
there's-
can bring it to you, they have to do certain steps, right?
No, they have to come here and just tell us what they plan to do. They have to, it's a courtesy
A year and a
review.
half after they started planning it?
The deadlines have been spoken to. We still believe the planning board is still within their 45-day period to comment because we only got this 8 days ago. But again, it's a comment. It literally gets sent as a recommendation to the Department of Education.
Right.
Now, practically speaking, if the Department of Education has already approved it, I don't know what result any potential recommendation would have, but the Department of Education could certainly revisit it based on whatever the recommendations might be. But I just want to be clear, nobody on this board can say, no, you can't do it. Nobody on this board can say, yes, you can do it. And the
Can
same
we,
way, when the
people go to
DPW,
the Board of Education, I mean, to the Department of Education and tell them that we object to this?
what you can do with the Department of Education, I don't know. I'm not an education lawyer. I don't know.
I think your time would be better spent perhaps addressing your concerns directly with the Board of Education or going to,
I sent an email to
Okay.
Mr. Levy and he never answered me. So
so
I know what kind of response I'm going to get there.
the other way is the council still has to negotiate the lease with the Board of Education. Now, there's a memorandum of understanding that's been signed.
Okay.
I'm not going to comment as to the legality in
Nothing
terms
that
of
can't be
what can
undone.
be added or not. But they are still negotiating terms for a lease. So for instance, if you say, hey, could you put in a term in there that says that this complex will be vetted by the board's professionals for, like issues that Mr. Robinson said about lighting and different things, maybe the council can negotiate that in the lease. It's a give and take between the Board of Ed and the council. So that is the real power that we have. When I say power, it's
Okay.
borough property that is being leased.
All
Now,
right.
they're leasing
So I
us,
need to go to
they're
the borough.
leasing property back to us. And remember, the Board of Ed, for whatever you want to think, they did listen to the public. They could have said, no, we're going to build it by sell over and gone to the Department of Education, and the Department of Education could
I don't
have.
remember any meeting that
Well,
was.
it was a big to do. To their credit, they did move it. They did relocate it to try to be good neighbors. So I don't want this to be like a bashing the Board of Ed type meeting. That's not what it's for. We're just looking to see if there's anything that can be added. Like I said, all the elected officials in this borough have approved this, so
All right,
we can't do anything.
I will have to have a word with them all. The other thing, you said the tanks, the gas tanks are not going to be in the ground, they're going to be above. That doesn't take into account spillage. All right. I mean, you have a tank there and you take the hose and you go to put it, you're going to have spillage between, when the guy with the tanker comes to refill it, there's going to be spillage. So you are
There's always
creating-
that possibility. There are safety measures in place. There's leak detection, things like that. But the physical transfer of fuel from one vehicle to the other, I can't speak
Okay.
to
And now
the,
you're telling me that besides this, they're going to put the Department of Public Works there too. So we're going to have to deal with all of the work trucks going in and out and through our neighborhood as well.
Well,
That's nothing that
beyond
I can
his
speak to.
scope. And that should be another meeting because there'll be a courtesy review for that if that plan ever comes.
Yeah, as long as we're informed. I mean, I would have been here a year and a half ago if I'd known that this was happening.
That's why we
Like I
broadcast
said,
this meeting on the board. We made sure everyone, I know it was after the fact, but we made sure everyone had notice of it. So they had an opportunity to say their piece, because that's the worst thing that could happen. You don't have an opportunity to say your piece.
Right, but it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse because there's nothing we can do about it except, bitch to you and, and you say, oh, I understand, but I can't do a damn thing about it. It's like,
The opinion that you have on that side of the microphone is the same opinion that some of us on this dais have as well. At this point, the ship has sailed. We can advise, we can comment, we can question, but can we do?
okay.
Well, because again, this, as we had stated, as the chairman mentioned, this is a capital review versus a normal land usage application. So in a normal, and listen, as a member of this dais, I will tell you, I have had to bite my tongue on other projects. I'm here because I'm also on the environmental commission here in town. And so there have been lots of developments that I have had to say yes to because, as Mr. Robinson suggested, the case law, the precedent there is that it's facts, not feelings. We can't vote
Right.
for things that we want or don't want. We
Well,
can
is it-
only say applications check the
That
following
DuPont
boxes.
Was included in these discussions. DuPont didn't say anything about the fact that they gave the property to us with these stipulations. I mean, I realize it was not put on the deed and it should have been, and I know who to blame for that too. But I can't see DuPont having made those stipulations and then you come to them and say, this is what we're going to do with the property that you said we have to leave as,
I understand. And look, the value of tonight is that people who are here from the Board of Ed are listening and hearing the concerns. The people from the council are hearing the concerns. Those are the two parties on both sides of the negotiating table who are doing this. So maybe if they hear your concerns, they will address them. I don't know. All I know is that we don't have the power to relocate this. It might be the best location. I don't know. I mean, I'm taking Dr. Labby's word that this was the only real location that was offered. So if that's the only option they had realistically, then how is it their fault if they, if they put it the only place we will allow them to do it?
Yeah.
So there is value in that people will hear you and people who are negotiating can take into consideration your concerns. And that's
Yeah.
what we're trying to do. Okay.
Well, just to the, did my kids get bused to school? My house has been a bus stop for Arlith School and Salover School and Roosevelt and the middle school at one point or another. It is still a bus stop for Arlith. All the kids are on my lawn in the morning and they get off the bus in the afternoon and get in their parents' cars. So I do understand. I love kids.
Thank you for
I want
that.
everything
Thank
for, the kids, but it just, like I said, I haven't been in that house for 60 years because, I didn't want to, go somewhere else. I love my house and my neighborhood and my town and, I just want to do the best for everyone.
Thank you for coming out. We're going to let are you done, ma'am? We can let someone else come up? Sure.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. You want to step up though, please? Yep. Oh,
35 Hamlet Drive. I'm just behind the whole.
Sir, come, but I think she was in front of you.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. You don't have to go directly if you're concerned about, yeah.
So I have a quick question.
Your name?
I understand,
and your
Jay Brush, my address is 35 Hemlock Drive. I just have a quick question. I understand that there's nothing you guys can do. I understand that. Where can we go to change this? Because there's a lot of fish things going here.
What I
Like,
said
there's a lot
before-
of things that are not right.
What I said before is that they're negotiating the lease for this property and, the Board of Ed, Dr. Labby, they're here right now. The council is going to be negotiating. If you haven't, and something you want in that lease, I would go to a council meeting and address it to see if they can negotiate something. I don't think they're like I said, they've decided that it's going to go there. I don't believe there's going to be any way to move it. Now, whether they can add things to the lease that can address concerns, that's another thing. We can also make recommendations to the Department of Education,
They don't
but
want to change anything.
it's not going to probably
Exactly. So
resolve anything.
my question is, they didn't do any environmental study, traffic study, and they get approved to build everything just like, because listen, if you do something behind closed doors and without the whole, housing, the people that is the owner of the houses and the whole community, is because something's going on behind closed doors.
It wasn't behind closed doors.
When no one, you guys
It
were
just-
notified?
It was, okay, let's just be clear.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
that you guys did something, by the
No,
way,
no.
Mr. Esposado, thank you, because you're everything that is good with this board. Thank you for everything. And that's all that I wanted to ask, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I also, if I can just say, the relationship between the planning board and the Board of Education is not an adversarial one. I have no doubt that Dr. Labby cares deeply for our children. I have seen it. I have attended Board of Education meetings. I have no doubt, no one on this dais or in this gallery should have any doubt that Dr. Labby and the Board of Education care deeply about our children. So I want to make sure that that's very clear. Thank you for the kind words, but again, we want to make sure that we're also thanking our teachers and our educators and our Board of Education that are here. So.
My turn. My name is Carol Angley. My maiden name is Chase. My parents moved into the house at 27 Ash Terrace in March 1954. I'm still in that house, except for 2 years when I first got married. I went to Arlith, I was bused. I went to Roosevelt, I was bused. I went to Wilson as a junior high, I was bused. I had to walk to the high school. I don't know that I can add much of anything. In my mind, if the procedures were not followed correctly, why aren't we starting over? I don't understand all of this stuff. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. Sorry, let's start over. As far as the kids, I care about the kids. I went to the schools. My kids went to the schools. They moved the buses at the high school away from Ernston Estates because people complained. What difference does it make having the buses behind Kendall? There are kids that live in those houses. Well, I mean, doesn't that matter? You know, I mean, I don't have any kids in the area anymore or grandkids, but there's other kids in the area. Something has to be done. Is there not an area in an industrial commercial area that can fit this, where we don't have to cut down more trees? It's bad enough how many were cut down on Cheesequake as it is. I'm in tears every time I drive past there. Lately, we can't even use Minnesink. So then the traffic on Ernston is ridiculous. It took me 10, 15 minutes just to go to ShopRite to get out on Ernston today. It was about 10:30 in the morning. Yeah, it was about 10:30 in the morning. I mean, it's ridiculous. People are going to start cutting through the development. I mean, something has got to be done here.
I think Dr. Labby has said, though, that this is the only area that was realistically offered by the borough. And that is not, you know, if that's true, and I believe them, then it's something that needs to be addressed with the council.
I still want to
Mr. Chairman, if I
swear
may.
here, you don't know how much. What the hell is wrong with the borough then? I mean, come on.
Yep, Mr.
There's
Chairman.
so many areas in town that could fit something like this that's not going to have an effect on the citizens.
I think the councilman, who's a member of our planning board, he wanted to make a comment in response. Go ahead, councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you know, I want to thank the residents so far for taking the time out this evening to express their concerns regarding this project. And I just wanted to express that, you know, the reason why the borough is involved, you know, in this discourse is simply because the Board of Education initially proposed to place this transportation complex on the fields over in the Morgan part of town of our borough. And this faced, you know, significant opposition, right, from our residents, many of you who are in the borough hall now. And it was, and when we as a council were urged to take action to prevent this from happening for where the transportation complex was to initially be built and developed. And the only thing as at that time was to propose what we believed we could offer as, you know, available land that we owned. And as we mentioned, this is land that on technical terms was not really what it was designed for. So from the council perspective, I believe that this is worth going back to the drawing board and to, you know, reinvestigate and reconverse. So I just want to express that from my opinion, and hopefully if it's necessary, you know, the mayor and the rest of our council can begin to look into this and hopefully come to a better conclusion with our Board of Education. But ultimately speaking, the only reason why the council was even brought in was because, you know, the Board of Education was willing to negotiate with us to even do a land swap. If not, they could have easily conducted the initial plans to build their facilities in the Morgan section of town. All right, so hopefully we can factor that context as well.
I just don't understand why.
Thank you, Councilman.
More commercial industrial area where it's not going to affect people. Obviously, it was going to affect people in Morgan. It's going to affect people in Laurel Park. I don't understand. They didn't do it right in the first place. Why can't we start over? That's basically what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Yep. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Hi, my name is John McGee. I live on 161 Kendall Drive, right on the corner.
Right on the corner of
I am with the
Cheesequake.
house on the corner, Cheesequake and Kendall Drive.
Got it.
The flags.
Got it.
Right. Now, I understand they need a bus depot, which I get it. You know, my daughter went to the school, she graduated. My grandson goes there now, he gets a bus. But eventually too, he's gonna have to walk from my house. They live with us. He's gonna have to walk to the high school. Now, which for me, I recently retired, so I'm glad. But in a way, I'm not, because I have nothing but tractor trailers all day long now going past my house. And as far as only save those buses, no. There's another bus company that parks by the pools over there. It's the mini buses. And anybody that thinks, like, if they think you think a tractor trailer don't go up Kendall Drive, no. I see, I'm home all day long. My cameras catch it. So when the warehouses go into effect and the school buses go into effect, not to mention, I hate to say this, but not everybody, my quality of life. My wife is handicapped. When they built that thing down there anyway, 2:30 in the morning, tractor trailers, concrete trucks all night long. And my neighbor who lives right across from me, sitting in the back, pitches falling off the wall, cracks in the walls all night. And I understand that has nothing to do with the bus depot. But you don't want to put it at sell over because people have got involved there, and because a couple of them are my friends and they got it moved. So now they want to move it here. But that's like saying for us, our quality of life is no good. Like we'll take care of the people in the Morgan section, but we'll just stick it here. And I understand you guys, I know you don't have a say. I know that. But once those buses go in, and now you're saying too, if everybody else is listed besides the buses, they're gonna put a cultural center in the other ball field that gets used every Sunday. So let's take some more land away. There's only one way out of the ball field. There's only one way out of this new bus depot. There's only one way in for the tractor trailers. Before my job that I just retired from, I drove a tractor trailer. I wouldn't take a chance coming down Menacing. Got your old train trestle there. So every tractor trailer, besides the school bus in one, I know I'm going off, but the other day I timed it, 25 minutes to get out of my driveway. There's no school bus. That's with the mini buses. I had to drive my grandson to Olive because we missed the bus. So what am I supposed to leave an hour early to get him up to the bus? Now they're also they're going to widen the road on Bordentown by the new gas station that never should have went there because you got one right across the street. So the tractor trailers, that will be the only way in. So in the morning, tractor trailers, buses, cars, you got the train tracks right there. And I worked for New York City Transit for 35 years. Anybody here ever see a car get hit with a train? Anybody here ever see a person get hit by a train? I've seen numerous. It's going to happen. The light's going to turn red. Everybody's going to be backed up and nobody is going to be able to move. You cannot stop a train like that. So something has to be done. Just because it wasn't done at Sellover, you just can't take this and dump it on us. And I understand. I don't want to see it dumped on somebody else either. But it has to go somewhere than there. It can't go there. Somebody's going to get killed. I wish somebody would have said that, but somebody is going to get killed. Those buses every day, and when you say they don't cut through, come sit in my yard, sit in my backyard and see what comes through there every day. And that's all I really want to say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good evening, miss.
Hi,
Give
how are
your
you?
Name and address.
Joanne Martino, formerly of Weber Avenue, 41 Hemlock Drive. I've been a Cerro resident 55 years. This is a very sad day. This is a big deal. When my neighbor put in a shed 2 houses down, he had to go to all the neighbors and send a certified letter and get our permission. None of us here got any notice of this meeting today, and this is a pretty big deal. And I know, I mean, I'm a taxpayer, I pay rent. I feel like the council, the transportation, the Board of Ed, you're all part of Saraville. Our taxes pay for all of this. How does this hand not know this hand? When I'm at my job and I give a presentation, I have to have all the facts when I go to my boss and I go to my clients. These are people you hired, we're paying for you. How do you not know traffic? How do you not know EPA? How do you not know what our streets are like? And okay, this is gonna happen, that's fine. I'm resilient. I lived on Weber Avenue. I lost my home, Hurricane Sandy. We moved to this part of town. What's gonna happen when the transportation building comes in and you take all these trees and knock them down and the water table changes. Kendall Drive, I don't know if any of you are familiar, it is so jacked up. I twisted my ankle. I walk my dog twice a day. You can't walk on sidewalks because we don't have them. The dog's pads are all ripped up. You go down Minnesink and then you need new tires and new wheel alignments because that road's all jacked up. What's going to happen with our infrastructure? Saraville is an old town. We're not made for tractor trailers. We're not made for 72 buses 4 times a day over these little tiny roads. So what plan do you have when this goes in effect for us homeowners when we start to get flooded, when our foundations start to get cracked, when the sewage drains don't hold the water? What's going to happen then? Who are we going to go to? Because you're going to say, it was a done deal. Sorry, we don't know. We didn't plan for it. No one took it into consideration. What do we do as residents of Laurel Park? Who do we go to? Because I understand your hands are tied right now. You can make recommendations, but where in that process can these factors be considered? Like, what do we do? I mean, this is a great plan and yeah, we need a place to go, but it's hard to afford to live here. And like, you have all these grandiose plans. Saraville's blue collar. We don't have high level people. Yes, our houses are selling for a whole lot of money. It's all the, you know, the new people moving in, but how do we pay to live here? And then all this stuff is going to get broken and no one's going to help us. What do we do? Who do we go to for that? Anyone have any ideas? I mean,
it's a rhetorical question. I mean, we're not here to.
and I'm not blaming you. I'm just asking,
All
like,
I can tell you is you elect people as the, and just so everybody understands, the theory behind all this is that public entities are immune from their own laws.
and I work in a law firm. I get it. That's not my concern.
No, I'm gonna get there, I promise. Give me a minute, I'll get there.
All right, go ahead.
And the
Go ahead.
same way people's concerns were, who looks at things like traffic and environmental law? The idea is the Department of Education does it. So it's centrally located, they have a standard set of guidelines, they submit the plans, and the Department of Education is to supposedly to consider all the items that everyone has concerns about, traffic, environmental, is it the right location, all that. What they do once it gets sent to Trenton, nobody up here is going to tell you what they do or how they do it. In terms of what can you do, all you can do is go to a council meeting and go to a board of ed meeting and voice your concerns. And then if you're not happy, that's why there are elections. That's that.
Right, but you missed the first part of my story. Like, why weren't we given like a little newsletter
Because that's a
notice?
variance. And when you get a variance, if your neighbor's putting in a shed, they have to send a notice to every.
So
The law says they have to tell everybody within 200 feet of the property line that they need a variance. So that you have an opportunity to go.
But
But it's a notice. It's not a request for permission.
It's a note.
Notifying you to come to
It
for a
knows-
hearing.
It tells you about it. That's what you're saying. I knew about the shed. Why didn't I know about a transportation center?
yeah, it's.
Because the law doesn't require them to do it.
But that doesn't always make it right when,
I'm not
when we're
saying-
supposed to be a warm and fuzzy little town. I mean, 55 years I've lived here. I mean, I know I don't look that old, but do you know what I mean?
I
Like,
understand that, but all I can say is, no public entity anywhere in the state of New Jersey, when they want to do something, has to send a notice saying this is what we're gonna do. They have to do a courtesy review, and there are public meetings, whether it's the Board of Ed's public meetings or the council's public meetings, where I'm sure this was discussed, and engineers and architects were hired, and memorandums of understandings were approved, and the response from the public entity would be, we have agendas, our meetings are open to the public, they're broadcast, you have an opportunity to always be informed. It's short of what you're asking for, which is if something's going in my backyard, I'd like a letter that tells me, hey, it's going in my backyard. But the short answer is it's not required.
right, I guess I just really want it to put on record somewhere so someone can hear that when this transportation department comes in and everyone is happy, and then when the residents start to have all these problems, that we can't hear that, oh, no one ever said that, or we didn't think of that, because it's going to happen.
And that's where
And-
the planning board's public, that's why the planning board has.
Well, and that's why we're here, and trust me, like I said, I lived on Weber Avenue, I was very loud. And I was an activist because we tried to get a wall before the flood came, and like we fought and we fought, and then the flood came and we lost everything we had. So like, I get the process, and I have one last comment to Dr. Labby. While I understand what he's trying to say and do, I take personal offense of him keep talking about that the bus drivers and the workers need a place to park their car because there's buses. I live here every single day, 365 days a year. I'm not minimizing our workers that they need a place to go, but I think like your town residents should probably go a little bit higher than your hired help.
Anyone else in person?
Ma'am,
Hold on.
just what was your name again? Just,
Oh, you got it.
thank you.
I want to share the residents' concern. Up here, I think a lot of the times ma'am, up here, the struggle that I personally will feel on this day is the disconnect between what is right and what is required. And so a lot of times, again, as the environmental commission designee, I will hear applicants say, well, we're removing X number of trees and we're putting in, we're taking out 100, we're putting back 75. I can't reject that application because I don't like it. You can leverage, you can say, well, don't you think you can do a little bit better than that? But I can't make that a condition of approval, right? So it is frustrating that more people don't feel the way that you do. And I am sorry about that, but please understand that we get that disconnect between what is right and what is required. What's right is you probably should have been a phone call. Someone should have stopped by. Someone should have sent you a letter, but yeah. All right. Sorry. I don't want to take too much of the public time.
No,
here.
that's okay. My name's Jeff Smith. I'm a resident of Morgan. I live at 185 Grove Street. I'm also an elected Board of Ed member, but I'm speaking here as a member of Morgan, not as a member of the Board of Education. I understand all of the Laurel Park's frustrations here because we went through it over in Morgan. We didn't know that there was a proposal to put a transportation complex at Slover until somebody went around our neighborhood who paid attention to a Board of Education meeting and put a flyer in our mailboxes. We didn't rely on the Board of Ed to do it. We didn't rely on the Borough Council to do it. We didn't rely on the Planning Board to do it. We didn't rely on Sarah to do it. We didn't rely on Mr. Robinson to do it. It was because somebody in our community paid attention. Laurel Park residents are here tonight because obviously somebody in your community paid attention. That's how things get done in this town. Things get posted on Saraville's website, meetings. There's a meetings tab. You can see every Sarah Planning Board Council meeting, everything that happens. You can go to the Saraville Board of Education website. It posts every meeting we have. It posts our agendas. It posts our minutes. It lets you know everything that happens. We stream our meetings. We invite you in person. They're at the upper elementary school. The planning board invites you. They stream their meetings. The council members invite you. They stream their meetings. If you don't exercise your civic responsibility, nothing happens in this town.
Yeah, but
So exercise. No.
They screwed up. They didn't have the meeting.
So
Okay.
that's not anything I had to do with. I'm just letting you know, if you want things to change in this town, do what you're doing. If you're not going to speak up, like everybody up here has told you, come to our Board of Education meetings. It's boring to sit and listen to an empty audience because nobody shows up to them. Nobody. Council meetings, it's the same 15 people that are there every council meeting. And if you expect anything to change and you're not willing to do something about it, nothing's going to change. That's it.
9 out of 10 times it don't change.
No, it doesn't election. No, we have
You need to try.
No, we have
Some people get tired of trying. People, like I said.
It's the.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
Chairman.
Is there anybody else in the public here, present, I mean, that wants to speak?
Administrator wants to speak.
Anyone else? Anybody else who's present? Because we have people online and we wanted to finish the people.
Jim, did you want to come back up?
Thank you again. I'll be very brief, Mr. Chairman. I promise I won't sing like the person online. I try and make, when there are difficult situations, and I hope Dr. Labby would appreciate this, I try and make a learning experience out of them. And I think there are a few things that we can learn here. And I'm going to pick up on one Council President Anoha said, because I've heard so many times, this was the only site that was offered. It was never the council's responsibility to offer a site. This is a school board site. And as Councilman Anoha said, the council, the mayor and council stepped in because they saw a crisis, because it had been, well, we all know what happened in Morgan. So they stepped in to help. So to say this is not the only choice, no, this was not the only choice. This was the only choice on the list that the borough engineer came up with. And that list was a list of properties that had been zoned or wasn't prime or wasn't declared open space. If this had been declared open space back in 2013 or 26, when it should have been, this never would have been on the list. They wouldn't have had it. They never would have considered it. But back then, the mayor and the planning board didn't do what they should have done. They took it. The mayor issued a press release, and that was it. But it's not on the open space list. It wasn't zoned. It wasn't put in the master plan. So I think that's important, okay? And just like, you know, I tried to help. It wasn't my job, wasn't my responsibility, certainly. I did it only because residents in Morgan came to me and said, can you help? And I helped do those, design and pass out those flyers, because I thought that was wrong to do to the people in Morgan, like I think it's wrong to do to the people in Laurel Park. And I did, in trying to help, submit a list of properties. I did submit the traffic report for the Arsenal, so the Board of Education would know exactly what they were getting into. And when the gentleman said their professionals think this is a good spot, which professionals were they? Was that an attorney's traffic opinion, or an engineer's traffic opinion, or an architect's, or the superintendent's traffic opinion? I'd like to know the answer to that question, if I might. And with respect to notice, you know, the plan, I commend the planning board for putting a notice on the borough's website. I could have been, there could have been a little bit more detail, but that's not their job. I understand that. That's why I took it upon myself to put out notices. But, you know, when the Board of Education wants the people to know something, like a referendum, they have no problem communicating. That should have been done here. And, you know, I hate to take this personally, but 4 times at least, I contacted the board and said, you got to do this. And I didn't do it to be extreporous or cause a problem. I did it to avoid a problem. I did it so that they would have been here a year and a half ago or 2 years. We would have heard all of these comments then. They wouldn't have spent the money that they spent. That's why I did that. So I hope we can learn from that. Another thing, I've talked to members of the council. I'd be very surprised if a DPW garage is ever going on Cheesequake Road. In this site, I don't think it's going to happen, especially just like I hope the Board of Education learned from what they tried to do at Slover School. I hope the council will learn from this, and they will not try and cite a DPW garage on property that ought to be preserved open space. And I talked to members of the council who said, that's not a done deal. They don't have plans. It was an idea in somebody's head. They're not firm plans. They never came before the planning board. So, you know, I understand that Dr. Labby's relying on what he was told, but that's what somebody said. That's not necessarily going to happen. So I hope these are all things that we can learn from. Most importantly, I hope we can go back to the drawing board, look at this from a whole new perspective, have an environmental sensitivity, understand, I mean, the other day, there was a big announcement, the mayor wants to buy 40 acres of open space, which I fully support, and I helped her with, and I worked on, I think it's great. But here we're gonna give away open space to make it a bus depot. Just doesn't make sense. There are other spots. The county had spots on the Main Street extension, the MCIA or MCUA, maybe even the MCIA. There are other spots, but when we're told this was the only spot we were given, that's the only one that was on one list with one set of criteria from the borough. So, when you go looking for something,
Jim, I have a
you got to be
question for
broader.
you. One question.
Yes, sir.
I've seen you at every council meeting that I've seen. Were you aware of the memorandum of understanding that was?
I asked about it. In fact, what I did is I asked about a lease. I asked if there was
Yes,
a
about the
lease,
lease.
and I was told there was no lease that had been agreed to.
Because I didn't see you at the council meeting when the resolution in 2022 was granted approving the MOU, and I thought it was odd that you weren't there. But I'm just asking, were you
Sometimes-
surprised that it was?
Sometimes I go have fun. I
Okay.
don't do this all the time.
Okay.
Sometimes I have grandchildren I like to play with. I always have grandchildren I like to play with. Sometimes I do get to play with them. But I wasn't here. I didn't know it was done, but I did ask about it at subsequent meetings. And I did ask the council to communicate with the board and with the planning board to say, the law, NJSA 4055D-31 required that they come in a long time ago so that all of this could have been avoided, could have had a spot selected by now probably. And I hope that too will be a learning experience for Dr. Labby and the Board of Education. Okay, thank you.
But Mr. Chairman, if possible, if I can just build upon that point made by Mr. Robinson, from the council perspective, after this, this deal, what was negotiated initially in 2022, and as far as early as January, perhaps, not far after the invitation was sent, as the councilman for this board, as a liaison to this board, for the Board of Ed to take a step forward to have this meeting. So again, and also to build upon the point of one of the other Board of Ed officials, although he wasn't speaking in that capacity, he did kind of express a call to action, right, for our residents to take out the time to really be more involved. And but ultimately, if you don't have the time to do it, ideally you should be able to trust on your elected officials to make decisions that are in your best interest. So I just want to echo the fact that, as one of your elected officials, as we're hearing more details of your concerns, feel free to continue to echo this in our next council meeting. If not available to join in person or online, feel free to send us emails. Hopefully, Mr. Robinson and other residents will attest. We do bring up your concerns in these meetings, and I believe that we will be able to push your concerns forward in whatever capacity that we can.
Thank you, Councilman. Does anyone from the Board of Ed continue, please? That's fine. Sure, come on.
I actually live in Morgan, and initially I.
Well,
was-
just wait.
I'll say everything.
Name and address.
My name is Eileen Pabon, and my address is 155 Norton Street, South Amboy. I live in Morgan. And when we initially were looking for the bus depot, we need the bus depot. There's no way for us to just keep moving the buses all around, getting sued by everybody. And so we had to do it. Dr. Labby thought the best thing was originally what happened was they said they were giving up the fields, that the fields were going to the new Sayreville site on Journey Mill Road, where the horses are. Okay, that's what they were going to do with the ball field. So when Dr. Labby learned of that they were going to move out, he said, hey, we own this property. It's flat. There's no trees. This would be a good spot for us to evaluate. So when we had the meeting, we didn't say, oh yeah, we're going to build the thing. We were looking at it as a possibility to put the transportation center there. I voted yes, and I live a couple of blocks away. The difference between this transportation location and I always mess it up. You know what I'm talking about. That spot is in the neighborhood. I mean, literally in the neighborhood. There is no industrial area. It's totally residential. And that's why it was not a good spot. And I did think about it after I thought about it. I said, well, yeah, that wouldn't be a good spot because we'd be going through, neighborhood. The transportation center on Cheesequake Road, even though people don't like it, every single time, and the president of the council, hear this, you're going to have opposition no matter where you say you're going to put it, because everybody says, not in my backyard. Okay? We said it in Morgan. Jeff was the ringleader. Jim helped. Okay? That's what was said. And that's going to be said time and time again. We cannot keep putting it off. The transportation center has to be built. So that is considered an industrial neighborhood. And what really makes me with Anthony, how you doing? I know you ran for the board before, but what cracks me up about you is you're asking all these questions and you just allowed, and now I know you didn't allow it because I just found out you had no choice with that big, huge warehouse thing going in there. Did you ask all these questions? Did these people show up to fight that? Because let me tell you something, that is a major problem. So I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim.
Everyone, let her speak, and everyone will have a
I
chance.
listen to all
Yes,
of you.
go ahead, Mrs.
Okay?
Clapone.
I listen to all of you and the haters on the phone.
Yes.
But my bottom line is this. Those things that you're asking questions, you already know what they are because you just let an $80 million company take a prime space that could have been a park. It could have been purchased by, I don't even know, we sold it, I guess. But the bottom line is you allowed that. And the school, these kids have to go to school. The only reason that they bought these buses is because kids were getting not picked up. The bus drivers didn't speak English. They didn't even know the town. People weren't getting to school. I'm sorry, but kids got to get educated. They have to arrive, and they have to arrive safely. So to say that, oh, we don't want to hear, oh, we don't want to there, oh, we don't want to hear, that just affects the kids in the end. And I know people say, oh, don't pull heartstrings. But the bottom line is those kids need to get to school, no matter what neighborhood they live in Sayville. And whether we own those buses or not, they're going to be on the road. Dr. Labby wasn't making it up. Our kids are going to school, whether we drive them in our own buses or we pay exorbitant prices for somebody else's. So, and the only reason the buses were even purchased is because the kids and the parents were in an uproar over the poor quality of the bus drivers, the bus schedule, everything. Is your mother's name Carol? Hello, remember me from Sacred Heart? So anyway, that's what I want to say. So when you consider, all this stuff, and even the councilman going back to the drawing board, that's really not possible at this point. And, we got people suing us. We can't park here. It's a terrible situation. And yes, it is terrible. But the bottom line is the benefit and the best interest is for the children to get to school safely. That's the whole idea behind this. It's not because we want to have a bus depot. We need it because we're doing something good. And this board has been very accommodating to the community. And I don't think that Dr. Labby's going to let buses run up Kendall Drive. There's nothing that the board could say, hey, we could tell people not to do that. We could force the drivers not to do it. It's not that it's impossible, but there's other people abusing it, and we're kind of getting, some of it is our blame.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr.
Hold
Chair.
on, Mr.
Well, the
Joe.
buses are going to still come through, the buses are going to come
Let
to
her
your
talk, please.
neighborhood unless you ban all the kids and start putting birth control in the water. More kids are going to come in that neighborhood that need to go to school. And that's the bottom line. And I want you all to consider the reality of why this is being done.
No, Ms.
Okay.
Bellin, we understand 100%. Our job, excuse me, let me talk, excuse me. Our job is to make sure this goes in a location that makes sense.
Yep, I know.
And I don't know if anyone ever made that decision, that this made sense for the better of the whole community.
Well, they
By
did give a whole-
congesting, by converging everything in a 2 square mile radius of the schools and making those people suffer, so the people in Morgan don't suffer, so those people have to suffer.
No, I
That
understand.
doesn't seem very fair. So that's what we're
understand.
trying to figure out.
But
Mr. Chair,
it's
may-
hard pressed to say that the $80 million company and their warehouse and all those fleets of trucks that are going past his house, right? Your house, he said the trucks are going past house. The council can do a weight limit like you suggested. They can do things to not have that be a problem. And that's what the council president should start working on next. But the bottom line is, no matter what happens, nobody's going to want that bus depot near their house. And that is, so to me, you're saying that private company, $80 million.
Guys, please, let her talk.
$80 million business has more, was conceived to be a better place for that company to have it, but the bus depot not. So I just think
Hence
it's.
the problems about the redevelopment agency and proper planning and we can only control so much. We weren't the redevelopment agency.
Absolutely.
So
And
I
that's
agree with
something
you.
that we should do now
Yeah.
that it's been brought out in the open for all of us here in this room, is to make sure that our council respects the citizen and involves us in more of their decisions. And when Jim does open record requests, he actually gets something. And just to clarify, I am the board member that Jim keeps referring to like it's a secret. I told him that it's 750,000 to $1 million because that's what Dr. Labby said publicly. I gave him a link to the video and you all can watch the video and see how it all went down. And there were like a whole bunch of properties. Some of them were that tip of South Amboy, this is really Sayreville, that's underwater, all flood zones where you're gonna park buses in flood zones. So you listen to the video and please do, because it'll show you how that whole thing went down. And the president of the council was not the president at the time, but he was a party to the vote and he voted yes.
Thank
Ms.
you,
Pabon, I want to just respond to what you said
Go
because you
ahead, go
did.
ahead. You take the floor and then I'll take people from the.
You did ask me questions specifically. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go back and watch the planning board meetings.
No, I
from-
haven't. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have not watched the planning board meeting.
Okay.
I'm talking about watching the BOE meeting where all of this was decided upon. And it was promoted throughout the public. What's her name? The Mayor Vicky.
Patrick.
Yes, she was promoting it. This is the first time ever. The board and the council are together. It was something like, a monumental meeting. So it was, and if you don't pay attention to what's going
saw
on
it.
in the city, then you're not going to be attention to it. But it was publicized. And, that's all I
Right,
got to
what-
say. I just hope
what
that.
What I wanted to actually speak to is that you asked me if I had asked questions on prior applications.
No,
similar
not
to the-
prior applications, one application in particular.
On
which was
warehouses.
the Tramwell warehouse. How many warehouses are in there?
The Arsenal warehouse.
Yeah, and from what I know, though, I think somebody else on the committee, the council said that you didn't even, that wasn't brought before you. So that's really I shouldn't have asked you because I kind of knew the answer.
I wasn't on the planning board when that application came up,
Yeah,
but
so-
what I
It
will.
was. It was brought before us, but it gets brought to us as a redevelopment that has been approved by the redevelopment agency and the council. So it's essentially a permitted use, right, Tom?
correct, yeah.
And we don't have any say to say you can't do it. All we can do is put conditions and whatnot on it. That's,
Well, I think as citizens, regardless of what side of the fence we're on tonight, okay? As a group, we need to demand that the council and the president of the council is listening to me say this. We need to demand that there is more transparency, that things are vetted to the public, and that we're not in a position where somebody like you who has 1,000 questions, and all were good, okay, I'm not saying anything was bad with your questions, but you could have drilled them people.
The difference,
know what I mean?
The difference, Ms. Pabon, is that I can't bring my personal opinions into
I
a vote.
know.
If a warehouse comes before this planning board and they check all of the boxes, it doesn't mean anything what I think or feel. It only matters that I look at a list and say, they have done A through Z, and therefore I am bound
Right.
to vote to approve that project.
Right.
I don't want warehouses here, right? But if I express a personal opinion about a project, that can be appealed. That decision can be appealed and reversed.
I know, because I can't do the same thing.
But
Like,
I also
have to
want our
vote what's
residents
in the
to
best
know,
interest.
because when we have residents who come up and maybe misunderstand why we ask questions and what we can and cannot do, I think it is, to your point, more transparency is important.
Yep, I
What we
think so.
cannot do is vote our feelings on this day.
But I think as citizens, we need to take it up with the borough council because a lot of times all this redevelopment, everybody getting mad and all this stuff going in is because they allow it. So we need to, as a group, fight that because that's what we need to be
I
fighting.
don't want to pit residents of Morgan against Laurel Park or any residents against anyone else, because you were right. Or we don't want to pit anyone against the Board of Ed. We just want to, our job here is to say, does this make sense? And all we can do is make a recommendation. The Board of Ed and the council have already determined it's going there. Unless something changes, it's going there. Is there something we can put in there to address any concerns? I don't know the answer to that question. I would like our professionals to have an opportunity to take a look at your plans and meet with your professionals and make suggestions and recommendations from a planning aspect to see if we can take care of some of these issues, if that could be one of the conditions of the lease, maybe. I mean, I'm just thinking of ways we can work together.
Yeah, and that all sounds good. And I hope that it does turn out that way, that you do make recommendations. And, you know, like I said, the board is accommodating. Dr. Labby, it's not his way or the highway. It's community way. And that's what everybody has to understand here is the Board of Ed is not trying to shove anything down anybody's throat. We just need to house these buses. And to say that the workers don't deserve, right now, they're working in a shack. Have you seen that blue shack by the football field? That's the transportation hub. So they do deserve better. You wouldn't work in those conditions. You wouldn't want to. So, you know, I do not think that Dr. Labby is being demanding or anything, but it's just like, what are we going to do? So, you know, but that's it. But thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if possible.
Go ahead, Councilman, then step up, sir.
Just want to, focus on.
Stay here.
I just want to focus on the main essence of our discourse so far is that, again, I know that some folks from the Board of Ed believe that nothing else can be done. It's too late or it's just impossible. For me, I just want to echo the fact that I'm coming from the perspective of the fact that as a borough council, we do rely on our planning board. Now that we've gotten additional feedback, it's my responsibility as a liaison to the board, to the borough council, to bring this information back up. And again, I want to echo to the residents, right? That if you believe that you have a better idea and a better alternative, with solutions, as your elected officials, I believe that it's our job to also reflect that as well. So I just want to echo that. And I want to let you know that we are encouraged towards it. I don't want you to leave this meeting believing that we hold that sentiment that it's too late. If you do have a better idea, you believe that maybe there's some locations, maybe from a more industrial portion of the town or of our borough or anything else, please feel free to shoot it up. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to see what we can do with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Sorry, you've been waiting patiently, so come back up. Yep. Did we have to take?
Just so John McGee, 161 Kendall Drive.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah. I just wanted to say also too, I understand what she's saying and I understand what they're saying. But once again, it's more really of a traffic issue and it ain't trying to pit Morgan against Sayreville and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, Morgan's happy right now because it ain't going there. Let's be honest. You're happy. It ain't going by your house. You may say no, and I'm not, but I'm saying, because to be honest with you, when I find out it ain't going by my house, if that happens, I'm going to be happy. And so will all these people. Everybody knows that, the BOE needs a bus depot, like I said. But getting back to that thing, when the BOE wants you to know something, if there's a half day of school or something, when they have a fundraiser or something, I don't know, because my daughter went to Sayreville, my grandson goes to Sayreville, I get a robocall. A robocall only goes out in this town when the township wants somebody to know what's going on. Other than that, and like, once again, I only found out about this through word of mouth. This has been in the works for 2 years now? 3 years, used to saying? Either way,
No, it's been about a year and a half.
Almost all of us that here in Laurel Park had no idea. Just like, well, you work for the board, BOE, so you probably knew. I don't know what I'm saying, but the people in Morgan probably didn't know either. Right. So what I'm saying, transparency, yes, but also too, I just wanted to say one more thing on the traffic. When that thing opens, because like I said, I drove a tractor trailer before I worked on the trains. You cannot stop a tractor trailer in 10 feet. So when those buses are pulling out at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, when it's dark in the winter, and those tractor trailers are flying, thank God there's no kids on the bus that morning, early that morning. But not even that, hopefully the driver lives. I'm telling you, I really, you need to do a traffic study. Honestly, it's going to come down to a traffic study. Because if anybody's sitting here thinking that nothing is going to get hit, you got the pool, those warehouses, people leaving DuPont every day. It's insane how many cars go by my house. You would think, honestly, you would think like, say, maybe from 10 to like 2, it slows down. It still don't slow down. And like I said, the cars, the trucks bobtail without a trailer, that's called bobtailing. They all cut through Laurel Park. The buses, listen, can't blame the driver. They want to go home. It's the end of the day. So they're coming up Ernst Road, they're turning right on Locust, and they're flying right down Kendall. And half the time, if there's a little break in a car, they go right through that stop sign and make a right. And I guarantee everybody in this room has done it because I do it. I've done it. Go back to the police studies. Look how many accidents are right on my corner. I've had a car on my front lawn. Thank God I wasn't sitting in the driveway, my wife and my grandson waiting to go. So, nobody's trying to pit anybody against each other, but honestly, it's more of a traffic thing. If that thing goes there, there's gonna be a lot of problems, which is gonna turn into litigation for the township, because if there's a school bus involved, who's getting sued? Not the BOE, the township. And it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Not entertaining anyone online, but are we able to trace these people who are online that were making those comments? No? Okay. Real quick, yes, come on, man.
Again,
Is she
Evelyn
on?
Smith, 124 Kendall Drive. Mr. Sposato, you said it comes to you, you look at it, there's A to Z, every A to Z is there, so you have to approve it. A to Z did not happen. They admitted that it did not happen. There you go, okay? There's your little window, okay? They didn't do what they were supposed to do by law.
Oh, she didn't. Okay, okay. Does anyone from Board of Ed want to say anything before we close the hearing, or no? Dr. Labby? No. Okay, anyone from the board have any other questions, issues?
Move the closed
Move the close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so we have 45 days as your recommendation, technically.
Yes.
Um,
From when we received it, not from today.
My
We have a meeting on
November
1st.
My suggestion is that we all digest what we've heard tonight, and then on November 1st, we can vote on potential recommendations. Does that make sense? Does everyone, rather than burn the midnight oil here? Okay,
Time to think about it.
Agreed.
okay. So is there a motion to open up to the public for general business?
Move to open.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, anyone here for general business that wants to be heard for the planning board? I don't see anyone in person.
Move to
I'm
close
not-
the public.
Move to close?
Second.
Okay, our next meeting is November 1st,
Yes.
and we'll we'll table this discussion about the recommendation and vote until that day. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
I had mind boggling that somebody would sit through a meeting.
It's like Howard Stern.